Now what will it be? Death or exile?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Film Exiles podcast. We are so happy all of you, as my boy Lupe would call you, from the cinematic wastelands can join us. Here outside of New York City, good God, it's bitterly cold. Jeez, it's insane. But the comic book world is heating up. We got all kinds of new announcements. WandaVision's out there doing its thing. And of course, finally, the reality that the Snyder Cut is coming. It's going to hit us on March 18th on HBO Max. I'm excited. I've recently become excited. I know I wasn't excited at the beginning, but I am now. And everything that we've been seeing lately is blowing my mind. I am so pumped. Mr. Snyder himself has been dropping some juicy tidbits over the last week, and a trailer is coming on Valentine's Day. I got to ask if anybody out there is going to be getting lucky because of this trailer. If you are, tell us in the comments, but do me a favor and keep it PG-13, people, please. So welcome to the second episode of our countdown to the Snyder Cut. Now, last episode, we talked about the journey, especially the online journey and the events, and talked about how we got to the point where this sucker is a reality. Go check it out. It's on Twitter right now, and it's also on our YouTube channel. And give us your thoughts. This episode, we're going to talk about the growth of the fandom itself, some of the splits, how it looked to outsiders, and what's the legacy that this fandom leaves behind after all of this. I'm Christian. I'm so happy to be a part of this, and I'm happy that the guys have asked me to be a part of this, since I have been an outsider to the movement until around 2019 when I joined the Film Exiles. These guys have been so good to me, and I have a ton of respect for them. So I'm really excited to hear what they have to say tonight especially. So joining me today are two guys who have been in this from the very beginning and have been fighting the good fight with all of you out there. First off, of course, it is the one, the only, Lupe. What's going on, dude?
Hey, what's up? It's Lupe. I'm happy to talk about this. Like, my hype levels have me like nervous as hell. My nerves are shot. I need a glass of whiskey, a good old fashioned, just to relax, because these activations, these drops, it's been too much for my heart. I swear, like, I need to calm down.
It's exciting stuff. It's my comic book group is blowing up right now. There's all kinds of cool stuff. They're sharing photos back and forth, old school photos from the comics. They're going back and forth. We're getting those conversations again, where Darkseid versus Thanos versus Apocalypse versus Galactus. It's just so much fun. It's like we were kids again,
what a
bro.
time!
Yeah, it's great.
What a time to be alive.
I love it. I love it. And Darkseid does look badass, but we will talk about that later. So, second, of course, we're joined by Mr. Positivity himself. It's Paul. Paul, I'm so happy you could be here tonight. What's going on, man?
Hey, looking forward to getting into part 2 here tonight. I've been spending an unhealthy amount of time obsessing over 15-second clips. Ready for the trailer tomorrow. Can't wait. But first, let's get through this look back. We promised last week we'd keep it under 2.5 hours. We kind of cheated by cutting the episode in half in order to hit that target. But tonight we're going to renew our dedication to keeping this concise. But I think it is a conversation that is definitely one worth having. Finish this journey, finishing the look back of the journey that got us here. And then after we get this trailer tomorrow, we're going to jump into our preview and start speculating about what we're going to see and talking about what we have seen, and I can't wait for that as well. So looking forward to getting started.
Absolutely, me too. So everybody, just like last time, I'm going to come back at the end. Paul has really done a very good job with Lupe, and they've put together a ton of notes, and they got everything organized, way more organized than I could ever be. So I'm going to kick it to Paul, and I'm going to let him really drive this conversation and kind of go round robin. We're missing Brandon tonight, but we'll have him back next time, definitely. But if you want to hit him up, definitely hit him up, because you know him. He'll want to talk about the Snyder Cut. So, Paul, I'm going to kick it to you, and at the end, I'll come in and close this out. Go for it, man.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Christian. So, we're just going to jump right into it tonight. Last week we spent a lot of time looking back at the major milestones and reminiscing about our perception of those events, any participation we had in those events, and ultimately leading to the the final announcement back in May of this year, or May of last year, May of 2020. But towards the end of that journey, we started to see a couple of bumps in the road, right? So I think we talked fairly extensively about the growth of the movement throughout those milestones, but there was a split in the fandom. And so I think tonight it's going to be interesting to have a conversation about what went wrong. What was the split? What caused it? When did it start? Where did it go wrong? What was the breaking point? And we've kind of broken that down into a few different sections. So I thought tonight, let's start just by jumping right into that split, because it's a controversial topic. There's some emotions on both sides. If you consider yourself part of a side, or if you're trying to stay neutral, if you don't know where you fit in. I mean, hell, I don't even know where I fit in half the time. So, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the differing philosophies maybe and approaches and the reasons behind them that maybe led to this split. And then we'll get into some of the other topics. Like you'd said early on. Once we get through that, we'll talk about the documentation, the legacy, and where do we go from here. So let's start though with that split. What caused it? Where did it go wrong? And Lupe, I'm going to pass it to you first, and tell me, what are your perceptions of this? Where do we start going wrong?
Wow. I think the different philosophies where the battle lines are drawn are, it's hard to identify, but I'll say from what I see, I think it's people who in general have been around since the beginning of this journey, and people who kind of joined later on. Now, I think those are the major figures. Then people from all walks of life and all times join in, and sometimes they pick a side or whatever. But I think so, and the reason why I think so is because the things that they disagree on have to do with how they see this fandom and the way it operates, the way it should operate. So, for example, there is the two main sides are RT, people who like the RT Snyder Cut account and banner, the way they've championed this movement, the things that they've done for this movement. And then there are other people who are on the side that you could call TPZ. And TPZ, many of them, not all, but many of them tend to be newer, and they have a different philosophy. So for the main thing that TPZ says is that RT Snyder Cut and the people under that banner and the people they support are quote unquote toxic. RT Snyder Cut people say that TPZ are front runners, newcomers. They haven't done much, and they're very they're quite ineffective, and they're clout chasers. Those are the basic splits. I try to stay neutral because I'm very close to people from the RT Snyder camp, and I actually have some friends in the TPZ camp. Overall, I think that the TPZ camp has it wrong, and I have faith that at least the people that I know that I cherish there are just, I don't want to say deceived, but they just have it wrong. We get it wrong sometimes. We put our blinders on. The information we have is wrong. So without rambling on, I'll just say that the reason why TPZ sees some people from RT Snyder Cut as toxic. Like, that's where the people who you will call toxic in the fandom are. And the reason why they're this way is because they came to the fandom, or their awakening in the fandom was at a time when we needed people who had the fight in them, who could take the fight to bloggers, to Marvel fans who were bullying us and harassing us and making sure that, we didn't enjoy anything, and berating Zack Snyder and berating these movies. The people who made, this campaign have to happen. So there were these figures in the fandom who came around, and they were very, very, they could fight. They could dwell in that toxicity. They could dish it out as much as the bloggers and Marvel, fans were giving it to us, and we needed them. I'm telling you, I was on Twitter at that time. I couldn't make threads and celebrate the movies I loved because the environment was toxic. Everything was polluted. So we needed some people who are going to push them back and really, bring the fight to them. And they did that. People like Judas, people like Chris, people like Stemont, people like Alfs, they really turned the tide. And so for people who were around at that time, we know how valuable they were, and we're thankful for what they did. And they're still around, and obviously, Tiger's not going to change its spots. um, they tend to still have that fighting warrior spirit in them, and sometimes it can be a bit much, but it's okay. And I think that's where TPZ misunderstands, because they came later when a lot of that fighting had died down, when the warriors and the toxic people had already laid waste to bloggers and had pushed them back, and bloggers were now scared of the fandom, and like, oh, they're toxic, which is what you usually get. So they don't understand that, or maybe they feel, oh, it's no longer needed. But I feel like it does a disservice to everything that they've done for us by being so dismissive. And also, we'll get more into other philosophies, but philosophies, yeah. But that's where the main split is, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of those points in present day. I got a slightly different perception on it, which I'll get to in a minute, because I think it's interesting that each of us come from a different background in this movement. I think we all joined at different times. Lupe, you were here before I was. Christian, you joined after I did. We've all have different people that maybe we followed early on, I guess, which colors our perception as well. So I think it's interesting to hear each perspective. And Christian, before I get to sort of my thoughts on it, you having come in latest of the three of us, what's your perception of the fandom? Was it already broken when you joined, or were you there to see it split?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I didn't prepare for that particular one. That was it already broken? I think it probably was when I jumped into it, because remember, I joined the Exiles probably the middle of 2019, and when I joined the Exiles, the first hashtag event was the big one, that I was a part of. I was also part of the dollar bill event, so I kind of, I came on late, and by that point, I think it wasn't. I think the split hadn't quite happened yet, but you could see the kinks in the armor, if that makes sense. You could see that things were starting to happen. So I don't know if it necessarily had been there yet, but yeah, I would say that I didn't quite understand everything, because I had to ask people what was going on. Paul probably remembers at that time, I would send them a message, be like, what the hell, who is this person? Like, I don't understand what's going on, and why do they have beef with person A? And Paul would fill me in. Manu too. I'd have to ask him, like, dude, I don't understand. And he would say, just stay out of it. Please do me a favor. You represent the Exiles.
I'd have to ask sometimes too. Sorry to interrupt, Christian, but I mean, I was in the same position sometimes. Like, what's going on here, right?
Yeah,
So,
I was confused, and Manu a lot of times would be like, "Bro, you're representing the Exiles well right now. Just do me a favor. Just do what you're doing. You're doing fine." So and that would be that. So, I mean, as far as the split for itself, I'm with Lupe. The way I see it in two separate ways. I can't say exactly where the split happened. I don't even know all the groups. I do know some of the groups that Lupe mentioned. I think there is definitely a split with the people who were here from the beginning, fought from the beginning, and then the people that came in later, like myself. And you could say RTSC and TPZ is a perfect example of that. There's definitely a bit of a fight between those two groups. And there's two schools of thought, where one group of fans could be very strong, antagonistic, whatever you want to say, and then there are others that were turning around and saying, well, we shouldn't be like that. We should try to bring more voices into the fandom. We should open our arms. We should allow them. We should be more inclusive, blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, both sides have a point. I've always felt that way. I don't necessarily agree with the more antagonistic side. We're going to talk about this later, so I don't want to go into detail now. I don't necessarily agree with that. But just because I don't agree with something doesn't mean I don't understand it. There's a lot of people in my life, politics and everything, that I disagree with, but I understand why they see the world the way they see it. And Lupe raised a point. You probably needed some of those warriors, especially at the beginning, when bullies were turning around and saying, you guys are idiots for liking what you like. I personally don't think that the answer should be, well, you're an idiot for liking what you like. But that's me. I also, you got to look at it too. Like, if people didn't open their arms in the fandom and try to expand a little bit, I probably wouldn't be in it right now. I don't know if I'd be a part of the Exiles right now. And, so I gravitated towards certain people and they accepted me. So that's part of it too. I think if I had constantly been butting heads with some of the more antagonistic side, I wouldn't be here right now. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on there, but the other part that I also wanted to mention.
Sorry,
in
not
addition,
to before you go on. I apologize for interrupting.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I do think that there needs to be made there. There are different type of people that you meet that don't like Snyder's cut, or the Snyderverse, or whatever. There are people who are just around to make life miserable for other people, who they take it as a sport, the DC versus Marvel thing. And their sole intent is to make sure that the perception around DC movies is horrible, and the perception around Marvel movies is great, and Marvel wins. And if you like DC movies, they'll make sure that you have a terrible time. There are others who just have a genuine, like, oh, I don't like it, or I don't understand it. So those are two completely distinct things that I think people need to be aware of. And a lot of times, when even the people that they call quote unquote toxic meet people who are genuine, I wouldn't say all the time, that would be dishonest of me, but a lot of times there is respect there, and it's like, okay, you don't like it, and the person's like, oh no, I don't like it, but you go and have your fun. Person's like, and everybody be like, it's okay. But there are people who are really, 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 really hateful, really hateful. So that distinction needs to be made. The reason why you're able to be embraced is because you're not one of those people. So while TPZ, and I'll say, I don't want to say TPZ, but people have this perception of, oh, toxicity is just like they're always just toxic to everyone. It's not really the case. The thing is, is that when we're on Twitter, we really tried to educate people about Zack Snyder's vision and his work, and for people who want to hate, that doesn't work. It just doesn't. So there is some nuance to it, is all I'm saying.
You are correct. I want to make sure that I say that. You are right. I will, the only counter I would have, nothing that you said is wrong. The counter I would have, though, is that I believe that those toxic elements, those assholes that you're talking about, exist in basically every fandom, everywhere. The difference in this particular, and I would agree with this, the difference in this particular is that bloggers, influencers, people who were courting, let's say, a company like Disney, they were courting their favor, they had them on their side. So I would definitely agree with that because I saw it. And I didn't necessarily think about that back in like 2018, but as I grew in the movement, I did see it, especially as people gave me examples of it, and I saw it. But there are people on every side. I mean, I know we're going to talk about toxicity in a little bit more detail in a little bit, but we have to recognize the toxic elements within all of our own fandoms. I'm neck deep in the MCU fandom. I'm neck deep in the Star Wars fandom. And those two fandoms are filled with toxic elements. They're filled with them. We attack one another, and we attack anybody that comes into it and says something that we disagree with. I don't personally do that. I'm saying that because I am a member of those fandoms. But they can
this one question I have.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt. And I want to know this. This is actually very, very important. Do you observe DC fans jumping into mentions and articles hating on Marvel? Like for me, I do hate on Marvel from time to time, but that'll be on my timeline, like by myself. Like, so if I don't hate everything Marvel, there are things that I like, as everyone knows, there are things I don't like. But for example, like Black Widow, I'm not particularly interested in it. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I'm not particularly interested in it. But you don't see me saying anything on my timeline about it. And when IGN like posts something about it, I don't jump on there and say, oh, it's just another trash, Marvel thing. If you go on posts about DCEU stuff, you go on like an IGN or a Fandom or a Collider, you would see a slew. Like, I've had to block up to 100 people within the past couple of days. So when we talk about toxicity in fandoms, do you observe DC fans going into Marvel posts and polluting the discussion, the conversation, making sure that, oh, this is like the worst thing ever, blah blah. Do you see that as much as we see it from toxic Marvel fans?
I think the part of your question that's important is as much of. That's the question, because the answer is yes. I do see it. And I've blocked people too, and especially over the last couple of years. Man, this is going down a path. Over the last couple
Yeah.
of years, it's going down a path. Yeah, over
I
the
was gonna
last
say
couple of
we
years,
right now we're not even talking about our own fandom. We're talking about DC versus Marvel, right? So yeah, go ahead, Christian. But let's bring it back
Yeah,
to our own fandom too.
we'll wrap it up. Yeah.
no, you're right, and that's what I was going to say. Because the second part of my statement at the beginning was, I think another split in the fandom was not just, the Johnny come latelys like me and stuff like that, and the people that have been in forever, or RTSC versus TPZ and stuff. There was also a bit of a split in the fandom where people felt that they were more DC/comic fans, and other people that felt that they were like Zack fans, and that fight
Yeah,
between the two,
yeah,
where
yeah.
a lot of
Yes,
people
you were
didn't
right.
necessarily like Zack fans can be DC fans, and DC fans can be Zack fans. And by the way, those two fans can also be Marvel fans. But
Mhm.
there's this tribalism that I saw, and people started to plant their little flags and put their feet down and say, no, 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 no. I'm a fan of this vision's right, this vision. So let's be honest, right? Like, so let's throw it out. Like you used the term as much, and you were 100% correct. So are there as many Zack fans out there just in general? There's not going to be, right? So his fan base is going to be a little bit smaller than, let's say, the people that are all going out there to see an MCU movie and they love it. So that fan base is going to be a little bit smaller. So the percentage of toxic people that are going to be in that group is just going to be smaller. 5% of 100 is smaller than 5% of 1,000, right? So that it's just the raw number is going to be smaller. So anybody that's going to go out there and hit up my mentions or hit up somebody else's mentions for liking Black Widow or liking whatever stupid Marvel movie was coming out is going to be smaller than the army, the legion that's out there either pumping up the Jeff Johns version or pumping up the MCU or getting backed by the bloggers and the influencers. Absolutely. That number is going to dwarf the other number. It's just sheer numbers. It's going to happen. So but the answer to the question is yes, I have seen it happen. But the second part of the answer is exactly, there's absolutely nuance to it. It is a sheer outnumbered battle. Absolutely outnumbered battle. And I would be the first one to admit that to you, because I've watched 2 or 3 of those people will get quote unquote toxic, right? And say, you guys don't like color, you don't like whatever. You get into this argument. 150 people will pounce back on those 2 or 3 people that were toxic. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's definitely the people that were backing the bloggers, or the people that were just like, I don't want the Snyder cut to come out, or I hate Zack because I don't like his face, or whatever it is, or I don't like that he wears, I don't know, vests, whatever stupid reason they don't like him. Those people were thousands, they were legion, whereas you guys were hundreds. So, and then of course, if you guys are only hundreds, if there's 5 of you being toxic, quote unquote, being antagonistic, there's 150 being antagonistic against you. So I think there is a lot more nuance to this. I probably talked way too long. I'm really sorry to both of you. I apologize. I probably talked way too long. But
No worries, Christian.
There's so much in this conversation that we can unpack,
Yeah, well, I mean, I was going at this from a totally different perspective. Although I think that last point you brought up is a big one, Christian. The fact that within the DC fandom, there are some people that are more DC fans and some people that are more Snyder fans. And I think that, to me, kind of ties into the original split. And I know, Lupe, you talked about the crowd that sort of supports TPZ versus the crowd that supports RT Snyder Cut, which I think is the current state of our fandom. But looking back at where it went wrong, for me, it was way, way before that. I mean, it was back when TPZ were part of the RT Snyder Cut crowd. I mean, they were one. To me, the first signs I saw of cracking were probably going back a little bit to the idea of how the fandom is perceived. And, I guess in my mind, the first event where I saw it cracking was with the call-in campaign, which we talked about in the last episode. And Stephen Colbert had put out a joking tweet, and let's be honest, he was joking. He said something about there's 40 people that are about to convince Warner Brothers they really want the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, he was joking, but he was joking the same way that haters joke.
Yeah, that's a snarky comment.
Yeah,
well, it was
that's a real
snarky,
snarky
exactly.
comment.
So that's the thing.
There's no excuse for it.
It was
There's
a joke,
none.
but it was a joke. It was,
Yeah,
it was
but
snarky.
still, jokes
And
come
here's
from a place
here's
of truth.
Here's the problem though, is that at least in my mind, I actually thought he was one of the good guys, and I liked his articles. And I'll be honest, when I started joining this campaign, a lot of what I did was trying to find people that I thought were moderately disinterested or uninformed, simply uninformed, that were going against us, and trying to turn them, convert them, open their eyes, say, listen, this thing is real. Like there's a real possibility it's happening. This is the proof, and this is why you should be interested. And I used Colbert's article. His article was called, I think, the Snyder Cut is more complete than you realize. I used that a ton. That was one of the main pieces of media that I used to try and convert people, along with a couple of videos from Comic Movie Marks. Those were sort of my go-tos, and it was pretty effective. And I considered him to be an ally. But I know that there were other people that had been in the fandom longer than me that remembered him back from the time where he was saying it didn't exist. And I see the screen captures now where he's saying it doesn't exist, et cetera, et cetera. So
the thing about him that you have to realize is that he's a fair weather person. That's the only consistent thing about him, is that depending on what's popular and how the wind is blowing, that's how he would act. Like once the Snyder, like at first when it first started and there was like this buzz, he came up, and then after some time when people started making fun, say not just him, there are other people who have been around for a long time.
I'm getting to that. Yeah.
And then when it started to become apparent that it was going to come out for real, then he came back and it was like, oh yes, I've been around since the beginning, and I've been, and I was just joking. No, you were not. You were wave of popularity.
I think he was around since the beginning for me, to be quite honest. And I think he wrote a lot of positive articles, because that wasn't the only article of his that he's been a consistent supporter of Snyder's movies. What he's not been a consistent supporter of is the movement and the way we go about it. And I think that's where the division came in, because it wasn't just him. So that was one of the moments I remember, which turned a lot of people against him and started a war against Colbert. And I think there was underlying resentment because people had seen him as a blogger. And I saw people lump him in with a lot of the actual haters on Screen Rant. He's not a hater. He is removed from the movement. He's been open about that. He tried to report it, I guess, from a neutral perspective. But that being said, he was clearly a fan of Snyder's movies. I mean, the guy did a BVS by the Minute podcast. I mean, you don't do that because you're faking it. I think it's Andrew Dice.
All I've said with Colbert, and that's why you don't see me attack Colbert or even mention him, is that I know people like that. They go with what's popular. That's it. The only
he's
reason
a blogger. I think he is a blogger at the end of the day.
No, I don't. I'm not going to blame it on being a blogger. There are people in the fandom who are also like that, who are not bloggers. Who, like I can tell you.
Yeah, but I don't consider him fair weather in that sense. Like he's not out there championing Shazam like some of these people, right? Like, which I'm going to get to in a second.
I don't know what he's doing, but I know that. So he's muted. I don't even to be honest. Like this conversation we're having about this is the most I've ever talked about these people. They do not spend any amount of time on my brain. You guys can testify to that.
No, I know that. Yeah.
I never talk about this.
But I think it's an important conversation, because to me, this 40 Club thing is a big part of the split, right?
No, you're right.
And
you're right.
I considered him an ally in the sense that he had a platform and he consistently wrote positive articles. But he also tried
consistently.
Well, from the time I remember him, he consistently wrote.
He was also part of 40.
Well, hold on, but this is before the 40 Club. This is part of where the 40 Club came from, right? So going to your point about it being a snarky joke, even though I clearly recognized it was a joke, and I was part of those 40 people or 60 or however many it was that were called, I wasn't bothered by it, to be quite honest. But I did understand that it was snarky, and I think the piece of that, and this isn't just Colbert, is that if you're going to make snarky jokes about people's efforts, the people that are actually putting work into this, trying to get this thing, you better be doing something yourself. And you better, if you're going to tear down the efforts of others, you better not only be doing something yourself, but have an idea of what people should be doing differently. And this is a theme that we came across several times, where people would put out and this goes back to the origin of the 40 Club. Garza, who is clearly a Snyder fan. I mean, let's not pretend this guy is anti-Snyder. He's clearly a Snyder fan. He put a ton of work into his periodic tables, and for the most part, I think he did a pretty good job with those things. I've seen him from his early days in the fandom too. He's got quite a following now. He's rubbed some people the wrong way because he's clearly a self-promoter, and that's his interest. I mean, but let's not pretend this guy isn't a Snyder fan, right? He's clearly a Snyder fan. He loves Snyder's movies. But one of the things where he caused a split was when he put out that article saying, basically, he put out one article saying it was going to be 30 to 40 million. And that was after Clay Enos, I think, had said it was going to be up to like 20, 30 million himself on a comic book debate podcast. But Garza supposedly had a source that pumped it up around 30, 40 million. And then he basically went on put out an article that was very discouraging to the fandom, basically saying what you're doing is not working, nobody wants it, it's not going to happen unless you find something better. But he had no alternative, right? It was, okay, now you guys go find something better because what you're doing is a waste of time and it's not working. And that's where some of the split occurred, right? So in my mind, these guys are clearly allies in the sense that they want it. They're fans of Snyder's work, but
I don't know what
trying
allies those are.
Well, they're trying to promote themselves as bloggers, as
YouTubers. And that's the point, though. And that is the point of bitterness for a lot of people. And the point,
yes,
and it's a very valid point, because one of the things that we know, like the arch villains in the story of the Snyder Cut fans, is bloggers.
The dark
and they're
side.
doing the exact same thing. It's like they're dipping their toes in both fields. Like, oh no, I'm going to be a blogger and self-promote and do all this self-promotion at the expense of the campaign. And one thing that I respect about someone like Chris is, no matter what anyone says, one of the reasons why we're able to get the Snyder Cut with people like that being part of the spirit and the soul of the movement was Chris said, I'm not in this 80%, and I'm not giving to any leeway to anyone. You're either for the Snyder Cut or you're against us. And that's how we're able to accomplish the impossible. That's what people tend to forget. If we had allowed things like that to fester and for people to become discouraged and for people to become disillusioned and for people to look at, oh, it's impossible, there's nothing we can do, we would not have gotten the Snyder Cut.
That's a big thing, right? Is it's the discouragement without presenting a better alternative. What you're doing is not working. You're just making yourself look toxic. Every negative tweet, every harassing tweet of Warner Brothers is making our chances harder. Okay, what should we do? Well, I don't know, but what you're doing is not working, right? That is, I think, what rubbed some people the wrong way. And don't forget, there were comments like that, and this sort of ties in with the larger, I guess, split within the DC fandom, where we had a lot of people in our fandom that were supporters of Snyder's movement, but at the end of the day, they were more, if they had to choose between Snyder's DC movies and just DC in general, they'd have been happy with DC in general. And these are the people that were saying, you know what, yeah, if you want to see the Snyder Cut, well, you got to go out and support Justice League and show them how much you love the Justice League, so they'll put more money in, because it wasn't profitable. And if it wasn't profitable, they'll never put more money into the Snyder Cut, which I fundamentally disagree with, because the theatrical cut of Justice League was an attempt to de-Snyder the movie. If you go out and support the de-Snydering, how is that going to get you the Snyder Cut? But then,
not to interrupt, but before we go on, just because I understand what you're saying, but people who are listening to this might miss the nuance in what you're saying. People who are quote unquote Snyder fans are not just Snyder fans. We're fans of it would sound condescending to say we're fans of good movies, but at least we'll say we're fans of a style of movie making.
Yes.
And that style of movie making, we have very high standards. I'll leave it at that. Very, very high, very particular standards. Because I always tell people who say, oh, you guys are just Snyder fans. Like, people who you'd call quote unquote Snyder fans, most of them, at least to some degree, like Wonder Woman. They may have problems with a few elements, but Wonder Woman is one of the movies that they'll generally tell you that they appreciate. Most of them tend to like some things in Suicide Squad. Although, we need the air cut, so that's a completely different thing. For example, Joker, most people who like Snyder's movie love Joker. So it's not like these are just Snyder fans, and it's anything that Snyder does. Zack Snyder represents something for these people. And that's what it's about. They're also DC fans, but they want DC movies to live to a particular standard. And most of the time, they see things that are not in that style as copying the Marvel style, which, let's keep it real, as we've come to see, is the absolute fact.
Well, what I think it is there's just.
Go ahead, Paul. No, say your first.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there's two approaches to comic book movies in general. Even take DC and Marvel out of it. There's the comic book movies are for kids. They should be fun, family-friendly action comedy. There's that crowd that likes the color. They like the jokes. They like shorter run times. They like bringing the whole family out. They want it lighthearted. They want these movies to give them a certain feeling. That's the hope and optimism that people talk about, the joy. And then there's other people that like a more serious approach, something that's more grounded, something that has stakes, something that's not necessarily for children, something that grew up with them, something that's not undermined by humor in scenes of tension, right? It's a different approach. To me, I call it the what could this look like if this were real? Because as a kid, you always watch these cartoons, and we didn't have movies with VFX like this. We didn't have like Batman '89 was revolutionary. It looks like garbage now, but at the time that was like oh my god, this is what it could look like if it was real, and I want to see that keep going. And Snyder, to me, took that to another level. Like that. This is the type of comic book movie I've been waiting my whole life for.
I think he even took it past what Nolan took it, because Nolan's world was completely grounded. Nolan was not able to answer the question of what if superpowers were real. So Snyder was able to take Nolan's grounded,
fantastical,
exactly, and add that,
put it into the real world.
Yeah. Like you're absolutely right.
And so to me, there's a philosophy or a preference as to what type of movie you like. Now this sort of overlaps with the DC shill sort of group of the fandom, right? Like, and a lot of them, they like Snyder's movies. They're advocating for Snyder's movies, but they're going to eat whatever DC serves them. And if you aren't on board with that, then you're toxic, because how could you not support Aquaman? How could you not support Shazam? How could you not support Birds of Prey? Even if these things are diametrically
Justice League. Don't forget, because they supported Justice League.
So if these things are, even if these things are diametrically opposed, even if they represent a conscious effort to de-Snyder, the obligation to support DC and show that you're a good DC fan supersedes the desire the desire to support Snyder's vision. And then they would throw back the argument, well, hold on, don't all directors deserve our support? Doesn't every director deserve to have their vision seen? And inevitably, each movie, they would argue, well, we have to support this director because it's their vision, even though most of these directors still had their visions tampered with by a studio that was still trying to push action comedy.
Yeah, the argument against that, and the truth is that, no, that's not artistic integrity. For example, Todd Phillips' Joker, that's artistic integrity, and that's fully supported. But the stuff that you're seeing from DC now is an attempt to be like Marvel. It's an attempt to pander to everything that bloggers and haters said they should be. The whole hope and optimism thing, it was not coined at DC. It was coined by bloggers. It should have colors. It should be hopeful. Have jokes, have humor. That was not. That's not something that their directors came and said, "Oh, I want to do this on my project." They changed everything and said every project must have this and must cater to this and must fit within these parameters. That is not artistic integrity.
Right, but I think a segment of the fandom believed that that's what these directors wanted.
To me, I think to me, it. I'll be honest; those are just excuses.
Well, and this speaks to the divide, right? Because I think some people would argue with you, right? And that's where these divisions
they should feel free to argue with me. Yeah, they should feel free to argue with me. But one thing I'll say, and I'm not willing to. One thing about me is that I see myself as unbiased, but I will apply logic, and I'm not afraid to take a stance where there's right and where there's wrong. And if people say, "Oh, it's just perspective," look at the track record of the logic that's been applied to this. We've been proven right about what Jeff Johns did. We've been proven right about Joss Whedon. So this is not just opinions. This is like facts. And if
Right. But
people want to ignore the facts, that's fine. But
there was a
I'm willing to take a stand on.
to your point though, Lupe, there's a segment of the fandom that didn't believe those things. And they've since, probably a lot of them have since obviously been shown the truth, but they didn't want to believe. They wanted to believe what they were being told. And I have no reason to believe they didn't believe it. They convinced themselves that Jeff Johns was a good guy.
Yeah, no, but when people are wrong, it's not they believe they're right. I don't think, apart from if you're not a rational thinking person, everybody believes that they're right. But time has shown that they were wrong.
Right. So I don't think we're arguing that. All I'm saying is that those people believed that you had to support these directors because these were their visions, and they wanted to believe that Jeff Johns was still one of the good guys, while still trying to say they support the Snyder Cut, but actively, I guess, supporting behaviors that work against it, right? If you support the Johns verse, the joke verse, or the DC MCU, whatever you want to call it, you are telling Warner Brothers that that's the type of movies you want to see. And Warner Brothers was putting those movies out because they were a conscious effort to de-Snyder the universe, to make a tonal shift. So how you can reconcile supporting a tonal shift while still trying to say, hey, we want the Snyder Cut, you're sending mixed messages in my mind, right? But those people that stood up to those narratives, the people that said, no, you can't support this crap. We're told they were toxic, that they were hypocrites because they only support Snyder. They're only Snyder fans. You only want artistic integrity for Snyder. And I would argue that I personally was invested in the world that Snyder was building. So I was invested in Snyder's take on DC characters. Yes, I'm a DC fan, but specifically in this case, I was invested in the world Snyder was building in Man of Steel with Batman versus Superman. I wasn't invested in James Wan's Aquaman. I mean, if it tied to Snyder's universe, great, but that's not where my loyalty lies. I wasn't invested in Andy Samberg's, whatever Samberg's name, whatever his name is.
Shazam.
Is Shazam movie. I've certainly not invested in Birds of Prey. Ava DuVernay's New Gods. No, thank you. I'm invested in Snyder's world. So anything that is specifically trying to undo, replace, or tonally shift from what Snyder was doing, to me, there's a conflict of interest, right? You're sending a mixed message. So anyway, this is a division within the fandom. You've got your people that identify as DC fans first and foremost, but who still want the Snyder Cut. And then you've got your hardcore Snyder fans that are focused on Snyder. And that's not to say they aren't DC fans, because we are fans of what Snyder was doing with these characters. And you can see that many of the hardcore Snyder fans have extensive knowledge of the comics, read the comics, but they were invested in that take, right? So that's one of the divisions. And then you get into this idea of fan groups calling each other toxic. And the virtuous side, of course, is the side that supports everything, because that's, they're not being critical of anything. So it's easy to present yourself as virtuous. But I often saw them quote tweeting and trying to incite pylons of people whose opinion differed from them. So the side of virtue, and that really turned me off, the quote unquote virtuous side of the fandom, because they would call the toxic side toxic, yet they themselves were inciting fan division by trying to quote tweet and vilify people within the fandom whose opinions differed from themselves. And, going back to this whole 40 Club thing, because 40 Club wasn't really part of that. I mean, I think I didn't sense that any of those guys were hardcore DC guys, like hardcore DC first guys. But where the 40 Club expanded, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but as far as I know, 40 Club is Garza, Colbert, Sam, and Dave Pena. And I remember, I think Sam got thrown into the 40 Club when he dismissed the importance of the Ray Porter as Darkseid reveal, right? He said, well, it's an interesting factoid. And then he got labeled Factoid Sam and got thrown in with the 40 Club. I mean, again, this guy is obviously a huge DC fan. He's obviously a huge Snyder fan. But I think he is more of the type that is a fan of everything DC. right? And that's
Yeah.
not necessarily
So
wrong.
let me tell you, let me tell, and that's the thing about these people. And Sam, like, he's one of those people. Like, for me, what once I notice people like that, I just mute them and I just continue living my life. When when before Justice League, Joss Whedon's Justice League came out, and I was trying to like sound alarms that guys, there is something really shitty going on here, and we as fans, we need to, like, be loud. But obviously, you have stands who it's DC anything. So I was labeled as toxic, as a negative person. Oh no, we're excited, but Lupe is going to come with his negativity. You're condescending. You think you know it all, blah, blah, blah. He fought me on Danny Elfman. Like, I'm talking about, like, he we went at it hard over the Danny Elfman replacement, to the point where he was even saying that Danny Elfman is just as good as Hans Zimmer. And, because those people, they would do anything to delude themselves into believing that anything that DC puts out must be supported and must be hyped without questioning motives, without questioning anything, no sense of rationality or logic. And that's a distinction that I think we need to make. To me, it's less between quote unquote Snyder fans and DC stands, and more between people who support anything DC and people who have standards. Because, for example, I am a Zack Snyder fan, but for me, it's about having standards. That's what it's about. You said that, people were investing in Snyder stuff. For example, the Joker is not a Snyder movie. It's not connected. It will never, ever be. And I love that movie. For example, Birds of Prey, which, you can even connect to the whole thing of, things need to be whatever, whatever, whatever. I actually like that movie. I don't hate it. I don't watch it or rewatch it, but I don't hate it. I think that there are a lot of us who are Snyder fans. It's because of the quality of the work, because of the attention to detail, because of the seriousness, because they're great actors in it, because the costumes are amazing, because the set design, the all those elements. But when we look at something like Shazam, you can say whatever you want. Oh, you love the fact that it has heart and they're kids. The costume looks terrible. The fights are not memorable at all. People like me have problems with, Zachary Levi's performance. Even if you don't, that's fine. You look at something like, Justice League has issues. Aquaman has, is wildly uneven from point to point. It's great in some parts. It's terrible in some parts. So it's about, apart from the grand scheme of things, it's also about having standards. And people like Sam and the people who are stands, it does not matter what's happening. They will just support it. And for people who have standards, that's a betrayal of where we see the DCEU being, the promise that was made when the DCEU first started. Because we've been here since the beginning. I can find you the quote where Greg Silverman said, Marvel was doing their thing and said, we're making the DCEU. And this DCEU is going to be different. We're going to have auteur directors with bold visions. We're going to tackle larger than life questions. And we're going to, have, Oscar-winning talent. And we're going to make these movies like prestige movies. There's a quote. That was a promise. And when Man of Steel came, DC fans were like, wow, this is it. This is the standard. This is where these things can go. So when that standard is betrayed, it doesn't matter. If Zack Snyder comes out with a movie that's like Shazam, I will shit on it. That's just a fact. Like, I don't think everything that Snyder does is absolutely perfect. So anyway, that's a roundabout way to talk about Sam, people like Sam and TPZ, and they became strange bedfellows. That's what happened. Because
they weren't on the same side originally, right? Like, so going chronologically through it, like there was the 40 Club thing was a split, right? Because I know it got nasty. And Dave Pena was in the 40 Club. I don't even know how he got lumped into the 40 Club, but he became part of that club. And then, as we go chronologically, Colbert and Chris had a split. and I don't know how it got ugly, but I remember it did get ugly. And I remember they started like chain blocking, people that like Colbert blocked everyone that followed Chris after something Chris had said, and Chris started blocking a bunch of people, and there was a huge rift between Chris and Colbert, and I'm not going to pretend to know all the details. I know there was stuff going on with the wiki page and fighting over updating and updates to it, and again they had different beliefs, both in terms of state of completion and cost completion. That was, I think, one of the big rifts. They also had different beliefs in terms of how the narrative needed to be maintained. So that was one of the rifts. And this is going back again, even before TPZ was aligned with 40 Club. This was a sort of a bone of contention, right? In as I say, it's talking about state of completion, talking about approach, controlling narrative, making sure morale was maintained, right? Because Chris was always very conscious about not feeding negative narratives and not putting out information that would discourage fans, right? Because we needed growth in this movement. We needed people motivated and emboldened. And when you put out negative articles, even if they're true, right, you can discourage people. So if you're going to put out negative news or discouraging news, you got to really come with a solution. Like, here's the problem we're dealing with. Here's how we can solve it. If you just put out, here's the problem you're dealing with, and this is why it's probably never going to happen. Well, you're feeding blogger narratives. You're feeding those people that want to pile on, right? So there's a philosophical difference there, right? Even if we're all fighting for the Snyder Cut, that's part of where the fandom splits, right? And then, as I say, I remember certain people backed out of the fandom, arguing about toxicity, saying, like every negative tweet aimed at Warner Brothers sets us back more than 10 positive tweets puts us forward. That kind of argument, and that possibly is true, because obviously there's resentment from the executives, but I would argue that those executives were dead set against Snyder and his vision already, which is why we got Justice League. So you couldn't really make things much worse. Who knows the truth of that, right? I mean, I'm not in their heads, but I mean that carried on. But then, as time went on, at this point, the RT Snyder Cut didn't even exist, right? Like, we had a serious rift in the fandom before the RT Snyder Cut was put together, because the RT Snyder Cut account was a response to division within the fandom, right? The RT Snyder Cut account, going from Fiona's timeline that we looked at in our last episode, was after 4 months of basic infighting. The RT Snyder Cut account was made as like an anonymous hub where everyone was supposed to be accepted and behave according to a set of rules. And it was going to be the central hub for coordinating and disseminating information without judgment, with acceptance, so forth, right? And it really did operate that way for quite a while, which led us to a couple of events where I think it started to go wrong. And for me personally, what I remember is when people started questioning or attacking the RT Snyder Cut account, there were times where eventually the account would block people. And then those people started saying, hey, how come I'm blocked? I was just asking questions and you blocked me. And then they would gain support. And then it was almost like a mob slowly starting to build. And there was obviously things going on behind the scene, because at this point, TPZ, at some point, and Lupe, you can speak more to this than I can, got themselves involved in the administration of the RT Snyder Cut account. Now, leading up to the soccer game, the soccer banner, apparently there's a break somewhere in there, right? And I'm not privy to this. I wasn't part of the RT Snyder Cut account admin, but at some point there was a break. Fiona had brought Chris in early on. At some point, TPZ had lobbied to be brought in. At some point, they were removed. And now we've got this soccer banner and two different approaches to the soccer banner, right?
The TPZ actually wasn't formed by then. There was nothing like TPZ.
Well, TPZ, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if anyone's listening to this, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the first I saw of TPZ, and we're jumping ahead into fan branding, but let's just put it all out there now. So fan branding, I mean, I remember the first fan branding I saw was when people started hashtagging Film Exiles on their names, to be quite honest. So
yeah,
so that's the first time I saw fan branding. But then after the Snyder Con, the Arts Festival, when those guys all went out for coffee with Zach, that's when I started seeing the hashtag TPZ in their profiles, because that was Team Pro Zach. That was the coffee club, basically, right? That went out for coffee with Zach at the Arts Festival. So now, were they actively identified as that within the fandom at that point? Maybe not, but they were already referring to themselves that way.
Yes, I think that okay, so I think it was a thing, but then when the rift happened with the RT Snyder Cut account, they used that as like a rallying cry in their battle against the RT Snyder Cut account. Basically saying that the RT Snyder Cut account was not there for Zack Snyder, and that if you're actually there for Zack Snyder, then you're with them. We're just here for Zack, which is a bunch of bullshit if you just think about it logically, because the Artist Snyder account was a so to put it all out there, what happened without mentioning any names is this, and it's a very funny coincidence of events that led to it. So admins or admin in the Artist Snyder account where people who are active in the community, but they're part of the people that you would label that were labeled as toxic. But they saw the value in us having that anonymous hub, which would be non-biased, and it could be a bit more professional, a bit more, and then there's the side that's more aggressive. Just like in any campaign you have, any war, you have soft power and you have hard power. That's war strategy. So the anonymous admins on their profiles that were quite toxic and really going after bloggers and make sure they were killing narratives and being quite militant, they obviously attracted people who were just like them, who were also toxic. And obviously they fell in love with those people because apparently toxic people like each other. So they became friends, but obviously they're joined in their righteous cause. I say that ironically anyway. But so they invited those people that they fought with, those fellow toxic people, to help them run the Artist account because they needed to lighten the weight. Then there were fissures and there were issues with strategy, and the people they invited on started to take ownership, like, oh, we're here and we can make our own decisions. But the perspective of the person was like, I brought you in, so you should be following the mandate that I set. Like I started this, I built this, you're here on my turf. This is not your place to say you don't agree with this, and so you're going to go another way. And the working relationship basically just couldn't go on. So the person decided to tell them that, you know what, it's not working out. We're going to have to split. Now, the issue and what I told this person was, they've tasted power, quote unquote, because the Art Snyder account, you have access to Zack Snyder, you have, you tweet out and you have control over like an account that has, 20,000, at that time it was about 20,000 followers. And from the things that were going on, I could see that they were really enjoying the power and the ability to mobilize fans and get people to. So I told the person that they're not going to go out without hard feelings. The person was like, the relationship is, not good, and the account is not running as smoothly as it can, and that it's actually like counterproductive, whatever. Now, the thing about it is that these are toxic people. These are not just regular people in the fandom who, if something goes on, they'll be like, oh, okay, all right, I don't like this, but you know what? It is what it is. So they turned their toxic energy on the RT Snyder account, which is the irony of it all. And they were
Sorry, Lupe,
viciously...
Sorry, I just want to ask one question. Are you talking about TPZ, or are you talking
Yes,
about their follower accounts? Because the one thing I always notice with TPZ is outwardly they were image conscious, but they had a group of really toxic followers who did a lot of the dirty work for them. And I know both sides, and TPZ isn't solely guilty of this. Both sides accuse the other side of using burner accounts. And I have no idea who was or wasn't using burner accounts. I tend to think these people were real people, not burner accounts, but I don't know, maybe I'm naive. But both sides accuse each other side of having burner accounts to do their dirty work, right? So I just wanted to clarify. So go on, Lupe.
I don't know. I don't know about the burner accounts, but these people. So basically, when they fell out with RT Snyder Cut, they teamed up with TPZ, and they both. And then one thing that they did was that they exposed the admins of RT Snyder Cut as people that TPZ already hates.
There was a witch hunt. There was absolutely a witch hunt that was instigated. Yeah.
So we had a situation where TPZ had no idea that people that they hate were involved with the RT Snyder Cut account. So they were actually supporters of the RT Snyder Cut account. When it was time to do an event, contribute, to tweet or whatever, they would be very involved. But once they found out that it was a person they hated, then they wanted to take it down. That's when TPZ actually like rose and it was like this, like they wanted to become the face of the fandom and squash artists. So TPZ publicly were like, oh no, we're non-toxic. These people are toxic. They support this. They've done this. They called Henry Cavill names and they called Patty Jenkins names, blah, 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 blah. And obviously there are a lot of stans who just like these people because they're good looking or they're just celebrities to them. And they don't have any logic in it. So once you say stuff like that, basically they were able to use PR to turn the tide. But as you said, there were a lot of things that went on behind the scenes. I'm talking about doxing, stalking, harassing, really terrible things that could lead to criminal charges that TPZ's foot soldiers were doing, and TPZ was fully aware of all of these things, but they kept quiet in public and kept on playing the PR game. So those are some of the things that behind the scenes things that a lot of people don't know about, that I've tried not to speak about and be a little bit neutral, because one thing that I and the admins of Art Snyder have always been concerned about is unity of the fandom. But these people who were booted from the Art Snyder account were so toxic and so selfish, they didn't care about that. That was a huge split in the fandom. But things are looking a bit different these days.
Well, I think, and that leads very well into the soccer banner, right?
Oh, sorry, Christian. Christian hasn't said a word.
Yeah,
you guys are going on. You're talking about stuff that, I mean, some of the stuff I don't know about, but like you're very passionate about what happened during that time. And, I'm not about to just jump in and interrupt. You guys were going, so do your thing. Well,
and I think you could see that even Lupe and I have different perspectives on this, right? Because we come from, we have different connections. Lupe's more involved than I was, but Lupe has also been around a little longer, and we have different entry points into the fandom. So we definitely have different perspectives. And I think we're getting to the point, though, Christian, where you can contribute here, because I think where Lupe left this, the TPZ split from the RT Snyder Cut account is right around the time of the soccer banner, and that was a real rift in the fandom, and maybe externally, I don't think we realized how significant it was, because as I talked about last episode, I saw that. I agreed with TPZ in the sense that I think it was Mick put out a tweet that said, why not use the branding? Little did I, and then I think Chris came back with, why don't we discuss this privately? Like, why are you putting this out? And I think what came out of it is that he had originally brought up privately, was dismissed, didn't get the answer he wanted, and made it public. And when I saw it public, I just saw his tweet, and I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. Zach gave us our branding. It's called Zack Snyder's Justice League. He's using the logos. Mm-hmm. He must have obtained the rights to this. Why aren't we promoting it? And that way. And me personally, I would have probably said, obviously you have to include RT Snyder Cut in the banner and release the Snyder Cut. But I think there was a segment of the fandom that kind of agreed with his perspective that why is RT Snyder Cut featured so prominently in this banner, right? Like, release the Snyder Cut hashtag, sure. Why aren't we using Zach's branding? But as I say, it was explained to me and we moved on, and it wasn't a big deal. Like, okay, fine. Like, this is what it is. They had to make quick decisions. People that are very invested in this made those decisions, and I trust that they made those decisions for the right reasons. So let's move on. But I think
I
there
have a
was.
unique perspective. I have some
Go ahead, yeah.
inside perspective on this, actually, to clear things up. So now I know it has been said that, you know, the reason why was because of like trademarks, and that is valid, but I'll be honest and I'll say I don't think that's the main reason. The main reason was, yes, to make RT Snyder Cut and release the Snyder Cut as prominent as possible. But the reason why was not selfish, but Mick saw it as selfish from his perspective. And this is one of the things that drove a wedge. Now, this is what I think, being 100% honest, letting people know that I am both friends. I'm not friends with Mick at all, but I'm friends with Chris, who was involved in this. So Chris, rightfully so, no matter what you think, did want the Artist Snyder Cut account to take all the credits, and for the release, the Snyder Cut hashtag to be imprinted in the mind of people. But it was all towards the ends of whatever we have to do. The growth and the more powerful and the more prominent the RT Snyder Cut account is, the more powerful we are as a fandom, because that's our hub and that's our center of power. But I think that Mick started to see Chris as being egotistical and being selfish about the whole thing. And that's part of why I told you that split was not going to go well, because I could see that.
Well, and where I think, and to that point, Lupe, I can see that absolutely. And I think what I would add to that is that some of the personality was showing through the RT Snyder Cut account by that point. And I talked in the past about people asking questions of the account and then end up getting blocked. And people were upset about getting blocked. They were also upset, I think, at how they got spoken to and how they were sometimes dismissed. And I think the other thing that is, a lot of people had ideas they wanted to bring forward. Not every idea could be accepted. I think people got bitter when their ideas weren't accepted or felt their ideas were dismissed by the account. So there's a growing resentment at this point towards the account, that when TPZ split, they were able to tap into those people. And whether or not that was intentional or just organic, I don't know. But there was a group of people that were starting to resent the account, could see the personality of the admins showing through at times, and felt that it was breaking the rules of the account. And so you're starting to see a rift there, where people are saying, hey, I feel dismissed by the RT Snyder Cut account. I side with these guys, right?
Once they connected to Chris, it all made sense to them.
Right.
Like, oh,
and then it became a witch hunt.
Bias comes in.
Yeah, it became a witch hunt, and then we get this ridiculous narrative of Chris is controlling Fiona's account, and it was pushed by some people with big followings that Chris was using Fiona's account, Chris was behind the RT Snyder Cut, and they really vilified Chris. And what happened was, and this isn't entirely to defend Chris. Chris was abrasive. Chris spoke down to people, and Chris rubbed some people the wrong way. But you can't deny the amount of effort and planning and the significance of his role in this, right? Like, Chris is instrumental in getting this release. Like, we wouldn't be here without him. But he absolutely rubbed people the wrong way, and I don't think he always cared. And maybe he was a little thin-skinned, and that started to show through, even through the account, right? So, you've got that rift, and then you got people that were just absolutely out to get the account. As soon as they were able to prove that Chris was behind it, or have it accepted publicly that Chris was behind the account, that's when the witch hunt towards the account was on, because all those people that had animosity toward Chris now turned their animosity towards the account. Because don't forget, Chris removed himself from Twitter, and people were going on the Chris hate train long after Chris removed himself from Twitter, and they took their anger and their hate out on the account, right? So, and that led into the next thing, which was the poster contest versus the arts festival. And the poster contest, to me at least, is the first thing I remember TPZ organizing after they got booted out of the RT Snyder Cut account. And so they've got their poster contest competing with the arts festival. And as I seem to recall, I think the arts festival was announced first, and then the poster contest came second. But the poster contest was advertised as, these are the dates Zach has chosen, and so people took it as though the poster contest was Zach's endorsed contest, whereas the arts festival was just a fan thing. And that narrative was worsened by the fact that TPZ, this was around the time that TPZ started doing Zoom calls with Zach and posting pictures of themselves with Zach, which gave them clout, so to speak,
Yeah,
right? or validity.
They use Zach as a tool, as a PR tool to legitimize themselves, and
it worked. It worked for a lot of people.
Yeah, it worked. It worked for a while.
Yep. So they got that legitimacy from taking the pictures with Zach, posting them online, and then that was reinforced by the fact that Zach came through for the poster contest, and he left the art festival hanging. Now, the poster contest was simple, right? The poster contest was everybody submit your posters, and we'll pick a poster. I think the arts festival was more complicated. It was trying to be inclusive of different medias, right? You got poetry, you've got I don't know what else, music, you had all these different things in it, right? And then there was going to be semifinalists chosen by the RT Snyder Cut admins, and then the semifinalists were going to be sent to Zach, and Zach would do the judging. And so it was a little more convoluted. It was a little more involved. People got became resentful because they weren't maybe chosen as semifinalists, and Chris was chosen as a semifinalist, even though he was behind the account, and I believe he had very openly asked not to be.
Yeah, actually, Chris wasn't. Yeah, and I was actually quite upset that they would do that. I was like, "What kind of?"
Because it was used against him. It was absolutely used against him. He knew it. He knew it.
How dumb can you people be? Like I was really upset. I remember Chris wasn't on, and I told him, I was like, "Dude, like they selected." He was like, "How dumb can you be to do that?" Like
when he's already fighting that PR battle, and then they do that to him. And I think they were trying to be supportive of him and saying you shouldn't be excluded just because some people don't like you, but it absolutely backfired on him, which is what I'm sure he knew would happen, right? So then you've got them taking pictures with Zach being on time and on board with their poster contest, and RT Snyder Cut, who's still trying to maintain some anonymity, even though they've been outed, so to speak, or Chris has been outed as being one of the people behind it. And they're left hanging with the art festival. And that's where you see a lot of people saying, look, Zach has chosen TPZ. Zach's on board with TPZ. And you got a lot of people moving over. And at the same time, the fandom's continuing to grow. And a lot of people are coming in, and they're being turned on Chris. Chris is the boogeyman. They don't even know Chris. Chris is not even on Twitter at this point. They just know that Chris is the boogeyman. He's the face of toxicity. Literally, some of these people don't know Chris from a hole in the wall. And you see it sometimes on the comments. Like, I remember when we did the podcast with Ray Porter, right after the Snyder Cut was announced, I saw comments on it. Hey, hold on. Was that Vinaldo? Like, when you hear the guy speak and you realize he's a human being and he's not toxic and he's intelligent, he's well-spoken, he doesn't always come across that way on Twitter. But he when you hear his voice, you're like, oh my God, this is a real person, right? Like, I think it shocks people because he's turned into the boogeyman.
He's not at all what he is like on Twitter in real life. I don't mean like he's not.
Yeah, he's thoughtful. He's thoughtful, intelligent, well-spoken.
At all. Very considerate, very, but
I think that all played into the narrative.
I would like to hear what Christian has to say, because we have gone.
We've gone.
I mean, I know he's kicking back, probably sipping an old-fashioned.
Dude, I got my bourbon right here.
We were talking.
I'm happy. I got my bourbon. I walked away for a while. I know what to. I'm just kidding.
Should have made dinner, Christian.
No.
Speaking of that, don't even talk about bourbon, guys. I'm on day 13 of dry February right now, and I got to make it 15 more days, and I'm in a world of hurt right now.
Maniac. You're a freaking maniac. I was out hiking today, freaking 18-degree weather. No, I'm drinking. I don't care what anybody says. I'm
good for you, Christian. I'm living vicariously through you.
What do you want to know?
Christian, give us your thoughts. Just tell us, just say something. You haven't had a chance to speak. What are your thoughts? Like, what's your perception of what's going on at this point? Are you aware of any of this stuff at the point that the banner's going on and the poster contest? And I know you talked a little bit about the banner last week, but what about the poster contest versus the arts festival? Is this even on your radar at this point?
Oh, it's on my radar. I absolutely, if I said to you guys I was as neck deep into it as you were, I was following it as closely, you guys would both call my bullshit, and you would know that that's not true. But it was absolutely on my radar, and friends that I had online and people in the movements and everything, and my connections through people in the Exiles and everything, were keeping me up to date on what's going on and stuff. But I can tell you, externally, from most of the other fan communities that I'm in, I'm going to repeat what I said in the last pod. It was like, guys, get your shit together. Like, that was basically how everybody felt. It was, there were moments of laughter. There were moments of people puffing out their chests and saying, see, I knew those guys were fucking assholes. I knew it. And meaning the whole group, like everybody, just saying like they're all toxic idiots. That was the feeling. And people were like, and they're proving it right now. They're eating themselves. They're eating themselves. That's exactly what they're doing right now. They're killing one another.
Yep. And they're not wrong. And while we were eating ourselves, the outsiders were like the antis were celebrating.
Dude, I'm telling you, they were I had, not everybody, like, I want to be very clear with this. Not everybody that I'm connected to is some toxic asshole, but I am connected to some people that are toxic assholes. And you guys shall all remain nameless. And if you want to block me now, fine. But you know who you are. You're toxic. And they will attack. And they liked it. They were very happy with all of this because they didn't necessarily believe the thing was real to begin with. And then when it got shown that it possibly was, and it was like, well, we can't reward these people, right? So they were like, guys, eat each other, kill one another, look stupid. Warner Brothers will tell you that it will never come out, and fuck you, you're never getting your cut. So now, for people like myself, like my boy Austin I talked about last week, that would have sucked. I mean, it's not what we wanted. That is not what we wanted. But unfortunately, that's the narrative that was getting whatever you guys were dealing with internally, whatever you were telling one another internally, whatever was happening, somebody getting removed from admin accounts, somebody running a poster event, somebody running an art festival, that shit, nobody cared on the outside. All they cared about was that you guys didn't have your shit together. And it doesn't matter if that's exactly what was happening or not. That's the narrative, because I saw it. I saw it everywhere. Every person I talked to said the same thing. People in comic communities were saying it. The Marvel community was absolutely saying it. People in the DC community were saying it. It was, you guys don't have it together.
Yeah. And you could see, oh, go ahead.
You know what, Paul? Hold your thought. Do not forget your thought. I want you to make a note of it. I don't want you to forget whatever you were trying to say. But you guys also mentioned Chris, who, by the way, I've interacted with him a number of times. I would never pretend to be his friend or his mind, because I don't think we know each other like that. But I follow him, follows me back. I interact with him. He was the fall guy. He absolutely was the fall guy. If I talked to somebody who were like, well, they're all toxic like Vinaldo, my heads would go down and be like, guys, come on. But you couldn't have that conversation with some people because their mind was already made up. Mine was already made up. And there were a bunch of those people that absolutely had never met the guy before. But he was also, like, some bloggers and also some articles that were written, they threw his tweets in there. They picked the worst tweets, not the best tweets, not the tweets when he was out there talking about good shit and raising money for suicide prevention. No, they put the one tweet where he called somebody a C-bomb. Like, that's what they would do.
Chris, sorry, I just want to back up your point. I sent an article to a friend of mine to highlight the way the media was against us. And I think it was an article by Uprocks or Playlist. I can't remember which one.
Uprocks.
I think it was Uprocks. And I said, look at the way these. I said, look at the way these people treat us. And my buddy emails back. He goes, well, look at the tweet from this asshole. He goes, that is pretty toxic. And sure enough, who was it? His Vinaldo.
But you know what? He owned what he was. You know, he always did. He never. You're
and
right.
Something that I told people 100%. If Chris ever had a run-in with you, it was because you were against the Snyder Cut. Maybe you didn't. Maybe it's not. Oh, you didn't want it to come out, but you said something or you did something that was impeding its way. Maybe it might not have been that you set up a dam to stop the river flowing. You could have thrown a pebble into the river and he would have just pounced on you like a Wolverine and ripped you to shreds. But that's one thing I can say about Chris. Everybody that says, oh, he was toxic to me, it was this. What was it that you did against the fandom to make him have been toxic to you? I've never seen Chris utter a terrible word to anyone that wasn't 100% behind the Snyder Cut. People say, but he called Patty Jenkins a cunt or bitch. Something like that.
C-bomb was for Henry Cavill. He called Patty a bitch.
That's because
but don't forget, that word has a different context in the UK than it does in North America, right?
Absolutely.
That's the issue.
Absolutely.
In the UK, like, cunt is like, it's they
calling someone an
I've
asshole.
traveled to the
Basically
UK
calling
a
an
number of
asshole.
times, and they drop that all the time. And
Yeah,
and you
it's
say that
nothing.
here, and people go,
Yeah.
You know,
Different. It's seen very differently. Yeah.
yeah, it definitely is. I
Yeah.
agree. Meanwhile, I
So
can say some pretty
But
horrible
what
stuff,
what
and people are okay with it.
one thing I just want to say, Lupe, the thing with Chris though, is that his definition of against Snyder Cut didn't always align with other people's definition of against Snyder Cut, and he was very defensive, and he had a very narrow vision of what supporting Snyder meant. And sometimes someone who was supportive of Snyder that asked a legitimate question would get pounced on because Chris saw that as being against the Snyder Cut, and I did see that happen a few times.
Well, can
With-
That's possible. To be sincere, like I tried not to pay too much attention to it. But I do know that, for example, like people like guards who would say, "Oh, but I was reporting, the truth," and it's like, yeah, but you did say something that was discouraging. So people say, "Oh, he called Henry Cavill a cunt." I didn't call Henry Cavill a cunt, but I can tell you I was not happy with Henry Cavill.
I've been
At
blocked from
all.
honest about my
And
opinion.
Patty
I'm blocked by a
Jenkins
lot
as
of people
well.
for expressing my opinion about Henry
Yeah,
Cavill,
and Patty
and I've not
Jenkins.
used
I
any
just-
negative words.
Yeah, I didn't say cunt, but trust me, in my mind, I'm not very far from calling him that. I wasn't anyway.
Yeah.
And see, I
wasn't
think like
very-
that's where
I did
like
the same thing.
you know what, like the last time I said like the word toxic, right, is a trigger word for me, and I said that before, and I mean it because I could spew a narrative in any way that I want. I ticked off the wrong people because I spewed a narrative that was probably antagonistic. So when you come back at me to defend, you're now toxic. I can label you toxic. And if I have people behind me, if I have an army, if I have clout, whatever, it's very easy for me to turn around and say, Paul is toxic because he went after me because I said something that he disagreed with. But I know what I said was antagonistic. So I really do have a problem with the whole toxic fandom thing because we're all toxic. It's just, and every one of our fandoms have toxic elements. But I think we do have to recognize, and you guys may disagree with me here, but I'm just telling you how I feel from my heart and what I experienced. We do have to recognize that there were parts, because there's parts of every fandom that do this. I want to be clear. It's not one fandom. They all do it because I've seen it. But there were parts of the fandom. I had it happen to me where people jumped into my mentions. If I said something like, well, I like BVS, but like, man, that Lex Luthor, I don't like that. Bang, you're too fucking stupid to understand it. Really?
Oh, yeah.
Really? That's
no,
what I need. I did not deserve that. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I don't know. I think we had this conversation before. I don't think you deserve. I don't think you deserve it. But I've been in this fandom and I've been around these people long enough to know why.
I understand why.
That.
Well, what I would say,
but I know, but
can I bring up one specific example, guys? Like
to you, so you wouldn't see it like when it's happening to you. You won't be like, oh, okay, I understand that they've been traumatized and they're suffering from PTSD. That's why they attacked me. You're worried about your own well-being.
Yeah, your emotions and absolutely.
Yeah,
when it happened to me,
that's
I
what
was
I'm saying.
fired up.
I understand both. I understand both sides because I have seen people, like for example, today someone posted something to like it was like a pretty like she said something to the effect of, oh, why would I think that this is going to be different? And
I saw
posted,
this.
Yes, and I posted something.
I saw this.
No, like, come on, like, you've been listening to bloggers. Like, it's not, And the person just went into Zack Snyder is it. He's never made a great movie. It's like, he's terrible. He's just going to be another, And I ended up, like, saying something rude to him and then blocking him. But that happens a lot. So it gets to the point where when you see a lot of an innocent comment, some people just lash out like, oh my goodness, it's another hater. It's another person who has like, ill intentions, So, which I try not to do, but there are a lot of people who have been traumatized by
I get it.
an overwhelming amount of it. So,
but
I hope that you don't, feel bad and, people welcomed you. And I would like some people, to relax a little bit and not really be like on that train or whatever, but
No, honestly, any person that I wound over the years I may have had a run-in with, one of two things has happened. Either I've wound up having some sort of online relationship with them, and it's good. We're fine now. You know, like we can coordinate, we can talk, we can have back and forths. It's respectful. Or unfortunately, we wound up blocking one another. So I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true.
No,
You know,
no, that's
it's
cool. No,
you know that happened. But
yeah.
there are many of them that we
Mhm.
follow one another now. We're mutuals, and we can absolutely talk about shit. And there's some people we can even bust balls. Like we could break balls about the MCU and shit and have a lot of fun about it.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, no. Some of those relationships went completely south, and I had to block. I had to,
Mhm.
and so did
Yeah,
they. They
yeah.
blocked
No,
me too.
use the block. Use like I've blocked so many people. Like if you're looking for people to block, just go to like IGN or
Have fun.
fandom,
Have
and
fun.
you'll see them. Oh, this looks like shit. Why does this look PS2 graphics? Horrible. It's ugly. Oh, why no color? It looks like it's dim. Block, 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 block,
Ding,
block.
ding.
Maybe I'll see one and I'll say something to the effect of like, you guys have been brainwashed, or you guys think everything should be like Marvel, just to put sometimes I'm not actually even like talking to them because I know they're haters. I'm putting it for people who may come and see their comments,
Yeah.
and then it starts to register in their mind, because that's what these people want to do. They want they want the public perception of these movies to be bad. They're putting those comments there for public consumption, so that when people see them, they're like, oh yes, these movies are horrible, they are dark, the CGI is no good. So if you can put a counter argument so that anyone who comes and sees it can be like, huh,
Yeah.
okay, but this person is right. The person is just looking at it from. So I do tend to block maybe 9 out of 10. Then
Yep.
maybe a 10 one, I'll be like, I'm going to respond to this one. Then they'll come back and I'll respond, and then I get tired and I'm like, block.
Block.
Well, and
Go ahead, Paul.
and then that's external outside the fandom. Within the fandom, though, we had blocking going on too, right? And one example I wanted to bring up while we were still on the topic of the rift was, in that example of like shutting down people that aren't necessarily Snyder fans because you think or people that are Snyder fans because you think they aren't. I remember there was one guy, I think it was Maintero, he went by, or Jumble Jungle Beats. He put out a tweet, I remember, saying something about, Snyder not wanting to, kind of giving conflicting information and not really wanting to give you the details. I think he compared him to a used car salesman that doesn't want you to look under the hood. Now, this guy's a Snyder supporter, but he made this comment, right, which Chris took offense to. And it actually wasn't untrue, right? Like, Snyder was only telling us what he wanted us to know, right? And he wasn't giving us the full story because he probably couldn't, and probably was being careful about the information he provided. But that I remember there being a clash over that tweet, and there was a number of those kind of instances. And what they did was they created this sort of animosity where people get blocked, and those are the people that, when this arts festival thing went down versus the poster contest, they could smell blood in the water, right? And he wasn't the only one. He's just one example. But it was like sharks with blood in the water. And people went after the RT Snyder Cut account with aggression, to the point where the account basically was forced to shut down, right? Because, I mean, we got to that point where the admins, like certain people that were fundamental in this movement, left Twitter. The account basically stopped being active. And then TPZ and their group really did sort of rise to prominence. And ultimately that led to JusticeCon, which was sort of a TPZ endorsed. And then you had event, which was run by Nerd Queens, what did they rename? Snyder's Amazons? Did they rename themselves something else, or were they something else previously? I forget what they were, but they used to be sort of aligned, I think, to a certain extent with the Exiles and RTC, if I'm not mistaken. I know Adrienne was part of that group, but now she's not anymore.
No, actually, Adrienne was part of them, but she was also friends with Chris. And when battle lines were drawn, they kicked her
right?
out or something like that. They split. Like she sided with Chris because she valued Chris more than she valued their relationship. Vice versa, they valued their stance more than they valued her.
So she became outcast with our sort of toxic side of the fandom, and the rest joined with TPZ and some of the other more well-known faces in the movement. So you've got Comic Book Debate aligned with them. You've got Chris Wong aligned with them. Dave Pena aligned with them, and they all got together and did this Snyder or Justice Con. It was Justice Con,
Mm-hmm.
and I think was that the same time they had the Us United hashtag? Was that the same event, or Us United
No,
came
that
with?
was
No, it was different.
that was like, yeah, that was another. So that was the Justice Con was like a series. That was like another Zoom call, and they came out with the Us United. And I was watching Zoom call. I was like, Us United. Like, what the hell are y'all talking about? I was so
Well,
mad.
I
I was
said
so angry.
it really feels disingenuous, right? Because so many of these people and had gone, not only quote tweet to vilify people that don't align with them, and which in my mind they're quick to label everyone else toxic and quote tweet to highlight their toxicity, but they're the ones driving the rift in the fandom. If they weren't quote tweeting these people and trying to vilify them, you wouldn't have so much resentment. And so you've got that going on, and then from what I understand, there's a lot of stuff going on in DMs. Now, I've never been involved in any group closely enough to get involved in these DM fights or people creeping into people's DMs to try to turn people. So I can't say from firsthand experience whether this is really happening. But I do hear that kind of stuff. Like people are creeping into people's DMs saying, "Hey, do you know this about this person?" Turning people, right? So I'd say I don't know how much that's going on, but if that's going on, it's at least I've seen a few screen captures from
there's
people.
Evidence.
I've seen some evidence of it for sure.
Light doing that quite a bit. There's actually it's on the timeline. It's not like a secret.
Yeah, people.
Also, those people like Abdul, all those guys, they've tended to do things like that. There's also like a suspicion that all the people, especially like the Snyder Cut filmmakers and actors, people like like Ray Fisher, like Ray Porter, like whoever you can think of, that there's this. I don't know if there's evidence. I don't think so, but there's this sentiment that TPZ, has been talking because has been like doing gatekeeping, like bad mouthing some people so that people like Zach don't associate with them. As there was a sense of that, and I never asked Zach. One thing about that I respect about people like Chris, like Fiona, is that they never, ever once took any of this beef to Zach. None of us ever did. It was something that I just could never bring myself to. But there's this sentiment that these people have done exactly that. This have brought that to try to control the narrative, to, of course, use Zach as, a mascot for their legitimacy in the fandom. So a bunch of like really interesting things. But I think it's very interesting because at this time, as we said, they did rise to prominence. People saw, Zach them, and it's like, oh, okay, so they're the chosen ones. But I don't. That didn't last for long. It didn't last for long. And
well, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to.
Well, I would just say that I think for that segment of the fandom, I think they're still seen as the chosen ones. And quite honestly, I mean that was the narrative
yeah, but I don't think so. I don't think so anymore. And one of the reasons why also is Fiona came back.
Right. So I was going to come to that. Yeah.
Yes. So Fiona was not around when a lot of this happened because Fiona, life happens and she got a life of her own and she's got to take some time off from this trivial nonsense from time to time. But Fiona came back with full force, and Fiona, she was like, all right, let's end this bullshit. And she vouched for Chris, she vouched for people. And one thing about Fiona is her character is unassailable. And the mistake that TPZ made was when they tried to attack her. And when they started trying to attack her, TPZ goons, a lot of the fandom was like, okay, this ain't it. And also couple that with the fact that I think it's plain to see that in terms of impact on the fandom and campaigning, and RT Snyder Cut and I'm including Fiona in that, do have a much bigger impact, are more passionate than TPZ. It's just a fact. And a lot of things that TPZ do tend to be self-serving, whether they want it to be or not. So, for example, events that they do like the Justice Con, the whole thing, those are giving them views. Those are giving them, clouds, being associated with Zach, they're becoming popular. So there's always that in the back of people's mind of they're gaining something from whatever it is that they're doing. Meanwhile, people like Fiona and RT Snyder account, they're doing these things selflessly. They're not out there trying to associate with celebrities, trying to rub elbows with famous people. They're just doing this grunt work passionately and tirelessly, and they're having a bigger impact while they're doing it. And that has kind of spoken for itself. And it's something that I always told Chris. I always told him the work will speak for itself. Like, just don't be disheartened by the slander, the attacks, the manipulation of the truth, the exaggerations, the rewriting history. Do the work. The work will speak for itself. I always gave him this example, and it's the example of, I have a cousin who is a really he's actually quite a prolific music producer in Atlanta. And when we were coming up, he made a song, and he made it with Usher in mind, and it was amazing. Like, this is when we were kids, and we didn't know about making good music, and he's just a kid, and he made a song that you could hear on the radio, and we're mind blown. Oh my God, it's crazy. So he met a manager, was going to shop it to Usher, and it was really. And then we went to Cancun, New Mexico for spring break, and he lost his laptop. And this was back in the days where we didn't have a lot of cloud storage and external hard drives or whatever. And he lost his laptop. And we were so oh my God, do you know how to make it again? So time went on. After a couple of years, he hadn't remade the track or anything, and he was doing well. He had other songs that he was shopping and selling and doing well, and we're like, oh, where is that song? And he said something to the effect of, I am the creator of that song. I'm a creative person. That's just one song. I can do without that one song. I'm always going to create. In the future, now, 10 years from now, I'm going to be making hits. I'm going to be making good music. It's not about one thing I did in the past. And that has always stuck with me in terms of people who have creativity in their spirit, or who make something. So for Chris, I always told him, they rewrote history to make it seem like they did more than they did. TPZ, unfortunately, is just a fact. They really didn't do a lot. And that's a harsh fact. But they ended up, at the end of the day, when the Snyder Cut, was on the brink of getting announced and got announced, coming in and swooping in oh, we're doing all this stuff, and we are the fandom. And these are people who didn't even engage, who made fun of efforts, who went against ideas that got the Snyder Cut. And I told Chris, don't worry, just keep on doing the work. It will rise to the top. And I think people have seen that, because in terms of just being active, being passionate, being strategic and intelligent, and Chris just has it in him. It's just a natural thing. You can't keep that down. And I think people, once the Snyder Cut account wasn't there and everything was in the hands of TPZ, the fandom started to say, where is RT Snyder Cut? They noticed the absence, to the point where they were like, where are these? We need these people to come back. We need people to, get. And then once they came back and people have seen the impact, it's been affirmed. So,
To that point, Lupe, one of the things that drove me nuts was the virtuous side of the fandom that had driven RT Snyder Cut basically out of operation, would then turn and say, why aren't they supporting and promoting our events, right? So even they were like, well, why isn't the hub promoting us, right? After they had basically just driven them all off of Twitter. So I thought that was interesting. And then of course that's even before the whole Us United, stuff, right? So that
I was like,
obviously,
us,
I think
you
people
what?
could. I mean,
Us,
even
you
the most
what?
neutral of people must be able to see the hypocrisy there, right?
I was so upset. I was so upset because the context and and what they were trying to do. Let's just put it out in the open. Was they tried to crush and destroy the Artist Snyder account, fracture the fandom, then say Us United under our own banner. That's what they want.
Yes, exactly.
They wanted the fandom to unite under their own banner. And I was like, look, if you've not made an effort to unite, then don't say Us Unite. It's insulting to the fandom. It really is. I have made efforts to unite with some people. There's some people that haven't, but generally what I tend to do is even with people that I don't agree with, I just don't communicate with them. I don't say anything bad about them. I don't subtweet them, say anything. But there are people on TPZ's side who have reached out to and publicly said, not all of TPZ is bad. There are things that they're doing that are good. And when they do events that are going to benefit the fandom, everybody please support them. But these people haven't done the same thing to RTSC.
Exactly. It doesn't go both directions. Yeah.
So don't dare say Us United. Do not, because you enjoy the division. It's what you wanted, and you tried to use that to claim the bring the fandom under your auspices, under your own banner, and that just didn't sit right with me. I had to say something out about it.
And like from my perspective looking in too, and the people that I was interacting with, it reinforced the narrative that I told you guys about a couple minutes ago. It just reinforced that narrative that shit isn't together, that there is no united. And I heard from a couple people that Justice Con, they poo-pooed it. They were like, it's self-indulgent. Why are we even going to watch that thing? Blah, blah, blah. And even there was this feeling that the Snyder Cut needed to happen, that they wanted it to happen. It was like, well, if these are the people that are surrounding this, I just want the goddamn cut at this point. I don't want to deal with this other nonsense, this fan shit. And what I tried to explain it to somebody at one point, and the answer to me was, oh, so it's becoming the Star Wars fandom. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, you're right.
Yeah.
Like, that's bad. Like, that's horrible, because the prequel fans hate the original fans, who hate the sequel fans, who hate these fans, who hate that. I was like, this is bad. If that's the route it's going, that's bad.
But and that's what that I think, obviously, that Paul is going to talk about, and we'll revisit it in our conclusion. I think it has to do with the life cycle of a fandom.
Yeah.
This is what happens and it's not just a fandom, it's groups.
It's groups.
It's groups. Look, for example, look at the Republicans now. You got Trumpers versus old Republicans. Look at Democrats. You have socialists and progressives versus more centrist Democrats. You look at, for example, you say Star Wars. It happens like when groups really grow, it's a natural thing to start having divisions. As groups get more powerful, there is more power up for grabs. There is more, then that selfishness, that greed comes into place. So you can look at it as a positive thing and say that the fandom is reaching a level of maturity.
Yeah. I can understand that. I definitely can.
I guess that's one way to look at it. And the one thing I will say in TPZ's defense, is that they've done a lot of good work with pushing the AFSP stuff, right? Well, that's one thing where they've really shined, and Mick in particular. I don't know, what his involvement was in organizing these events, but what I do remember about him is that he was always the one to sort of tabulate and highlight the totals, and to put that face on the fandom of, look how much money we've raised, here's how much we raised at each event, and constantly updating those totals and pushing for AFSP. And he wrote that blog article that went on the AFSP website. So they have been big in pushing the charitable aspect, and I think that's where Snyder really bought into them as well, right? Because obviously that's close to his heart, right? This is done in tribute to his daughter. So, and he said repeatedly on a lot of these things that, this is this is why we fight angle, right? And this is what really matters, and this is saving lives, right? So they've really connected with him on that front, and they have, to their credit, done a very good job with promoting the charity. So to leave it on a positive note, I would give them that, right? That's the angle they've pushed, and they've done a good job with promoting the
Paul,
FSP.
I'll also say too, before you move on and you segue to your next point, you're talking about united, right? Like we can all talk about the positive impact of the legacy in a minute. We could talk about the legacy in a couple of minutes. We could talk about how you got the Snyder cut. That's a positive, right? So we could talk about all that. You want to talk about leaving one lasting legacy and talk about it where you can be united about. Raising money for suicide awareness and prevention. Like that, everybody can pat themselves on the back for that. No matter what everybody agrees, disagrees with, who argued with who fought with who, where the fandom split, who doesn't like Chris, who loves Chris, who whatever, it doesn't matter. Raised awareness for suicide prevention and put money aside for suicide prevention. And that's something that I think it affects me personally. I talk about it almost every episode, and you guys are probably all sick of it, but it affects me, and it's affected my family. Sorry. And you guys should all be very, very proud of yourselves for that, because I don't know what else I say. I got to stop. I don't know what else I can say, but yeah, you guys really should. That's one thing. Everybody should be under that banner.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Christian, because I think, they've done a good job of promoting it, but everyone has contributed to it. And I think it's, for even people within the fandom, it's a raised awareness for ourselves. And it's raised awareness outside of the fandom. So it's certainly, as you say, it's going to be one of the great positive, lasting legacies of this whole movement. So with that, I think we should probably hit the turbo button a little bit, because we went a little longer again as usual than we probably wanted to in the fan division. But I want to quickly touch on the maturity of the movement, the growth of the fandom post the May 20th release announcement, and just get your thoughts on that, because ever since this announcement was made, and people said, "Holy shit, it's actually happening," it seems like there's a whole new fandom. Like, people that I'd never seen before have come out of the woodwork and are now prominent YouTubers advocating for this thing, right? Like, there's got to be 5 to 10 new YouTube channels that I'd never heard of before the announcement that are all now sort of borderline faces of the fandom, right? Now maybe I just wasn't in their circles, I don't know, but and maybe that's partly COVID, because some people are off work and are looking for new ways to generate income or hobbies, whatever. But what do you guys think about that? What have you seen about the fandom post announcement? And then, as I say, it's partly new YouTube channels, partly it's a shift in tone for established YouTube bloggers, and then partly it's some of the access media and some of these the anti sites, the hate sites that have had to sort of turn their narratives around. So briefly, so we can sort of wrap this up, what are your thoughts on that? And Lupe, do you have anything to add, sort of say on that?
I will focus on Sean O'Connell. I think he deserves his own spot. Sean O'Connell, controversial figure because of our history with bloggers. And as I say, I will always give the benefit of the doubt to my fellow fans, because like Kryptonians, I will never raise a sword against a fellow fan. So I understand why there's a lot of skepticism, why against him, and people give him a very hard time. And I will never defend him to fans. Like, they're free to do whatever they want, because bloggers did result in this. However, I don't think he's a very bad guy, and I think he's actually done quite a bit of good amongst his blogger friends, because he's friends with a lot of people like in that community, and they tend to have a hive mind kind of way of thinking. And because he's researched this so much and he's so invested in it, and obviously he's more of an expert on it than they are, he has the high ground. I have the high ground. Don't jump.
Well,
Don't do it, Anakin.
And not to hijack, but basically this does speak to another difference in philosophy within the fandom, is that I think some of us believe we need to accept all these newcomers and extend our reach. And someone like Sean O'Connell, who's got an existing fan base and has the ability to reach and impact a large segment of people that aren't on our side and turn them to our side. I think there are a lot of people that really do value that as an asset, and I think there is very much a value to be gained there. At the same time, there's a segment of the fandom that's very distrustful and not willing
Yeah.
to embrace those people and are just waiting to pounce on them when they screw up.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that with Sean O'Connell, right?
So yeah, so I'm in the middle, as you can tell. Like I don't know where it's. I guess it's like anything. And I mean, you're both very learned people, so you know that a lot of times we read a lot of theories, but the truth about life is that it's a case by case basis, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, we can say, "Oh, we hate bloggers." No Snyder Cut fan is going to tell you that they hate Grace Randolph. I mean, maybe 1% or 2 or 3. And I think that with Sean O'Connell, for me, it took a while for me to trust him because of the history there. But I think I have a pretty good trust of him right now. It still doesn't mean that I'm completely advocating for him and he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm still very wary of the dangers of bloggers, but I'm okay with him. I think now the people who are against that philosophy, the nuance I think got lost in that conversation is this, and please pay attention to this. So there are people who hate Zack Snyder, and there's nothing you can do about it. They hate Zack Snyder. They think Snyder fans are toxic. There is nothing you can do about it, and we know that. People like Devin Faraci, people like Matt Goldberg from Collider, people like the guy that does Slash Film, Peter Scrietta or whatever. The idea of people was that people should be nice to those people and you can win them over. And I don't believe that. I never believed that. Because they've proven time and time again that you just can't. And so altering your behavior for them is just unwise. Like, do you, because they will no matter what you do, they will think you're toxic, and no matter what you do, they're going to say and do what they want to do. So the best thing to do is to meet them head on, meet steel with steel, and calm them down. Because I'm telling you, although bloggers call Snyder fans toxic, they know not to cross some lines. They think twice before crossing lines because they know that we would go at them. And that's like the honest truth of the matter. And sometimes that's valuable. Sometimes I agree it's not. But I think that in some cases our hands are forced to the point where it is what it is. If that makes sense. So it depends.
I mean, I'm saying
it depends on the case.
Yeah.
So, for example,
Well,
Sean O'Connell and Grace Randolph are people who have proven themselves. For example, Paul Shirey, someone who faltered and has come back around. So there are people where you can reason with them and you can be nice to them, and there are people who being nice to them, like And I always compared it with Stockholm syndrome in terms of being beaten over the head so much that you begin to desire comfort from the person who's been injuring you, and so you begin to alter your behavior to hope that they'll be nice to you, and usually they don't. It's a very terrible comparison because Stockholm syndrome is something fucking draconian, but it's still a fact. Cancel.
I think I have a very different outlook on it. Like me personally, I look at it as these guys have a platform. When they're supporting your agenda, support them. Help them amplify their message. When they're working against you, don't. It's not about like being a fan of these people or championing these people or putting them on a pedestal. It's just simply when they're promoting the message you want to promote, support them. Show them that there's basically give them positive feedback. Dangle the carrot. You want more positive feedback? Say more good stuff. When they turn on you, if they're against you, then you hammer them. With it, right? Like you're basically training them, right? You're positive reinforcement, or you're giving them the stick, right? You're punishing them when they're, and really that's it. Like I mean, I don't have any allegiance to any of these people, but if they're going to push our message to an audience that needs to hear it, that doesn't know it currently, if they're going to spread our agenda, then you support them while they're doing it. And if they change and they're not supporting anymore, then you take that support away. I'm not as skeptical. I'm not as jaded, I guess. So I'm not as hesitant. It's just a very simple, is what this person's saying positive to what I want? If so, like and retweet. If not, then either comment or don't, but I'm certainly not going to promote them or look for their favor. I couldn't give a shit if some random blue check mark on the internet who, is blogging for a living, likes what I like or not. But if they have a platform and they can promote it, then I'll support them while they're doing it, right? Because that's additional reach, and that's how I look at it. I don't know, Christian, do you have anything to add on the growth of this fandom post-release?
You guys covered it well. The only thing I would say is that I've absolutely seen a change in the narrative, and I think that I saw in my communities, especially like in my fan communities, we talked about the hashtag event in the last episode, and that's when I saw like fun, excitement, especially comic fans turning around and being like, "Hey man, we got hosed as well," with that last movie. So because we got hosed too, so it would be nice to see, you started telling us we're going to get the Sod and Dark Side and all this other shit, and they really started getting very excited about it. But absolutely, once the official announcement came out that this was happening, yeah, I definitely saw a narrative shift. There's definitely going to be, look guys, there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be somebody that hates it. There's always going to be a grifter. There's always going to be somebody that jumps on board who's going to want to try to make money or gain a little clout or whatever it may be. And you guys should be protective of the name that you've built up until now. You should be protective of your family, your fandom, and you should be protective of Zach if you feel that that's the right thing to do as well. So I agree with all of you doing that. I will say you can't control certain things. They're out of your hands. However, if people are going to jump on board and put some positive stuff out there about it and say, hey, guys, you should get HBO Max. You should watch the Snyder Cut. Hey, there is that old adage that any PR is good PR, right? I don't necessarily agree with that. I have to admit. However, I don't necessarily agree with that. I will admit, though, that there's a lot more people out there saying you should be excited about this than there ever was before. You guys should pat yourselves in the back because that happened, but you also should, if someone's going to say something positive, freaking retweet that shit, get that out there. Right now, you need more people and more eyeballs, and you need more people signing up for HBO Max.
Yeah, no, just like I didn't go into that. I think that's really important, but that's also one of those funny things about life. It's when you have success, people want to attach themselves.
Yeah,
to it.
Yeah, they do.
So, yeah,
but they want to be like, hey, I knew Lupe when, right? We were boys back then, bro.
Exactly.
There's definitely been a lot of YouTubers coming out of the woodwork to attach themselves to success now that weren't involved in the fight, but are happy to jump on now that it's happening.
Sure,
and at the end, and people could resent that maybe at some level, but at the same time, you have to embrace it because they're helping us grow the message. You got to use it. Yeah,
exactly. So basically, we make it transactional.
And that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's as simple as that. Take the emotion out of it. Are they helping us promote the Snyder Cut? Are they spreading positive word about it? Are they going to encourage people to view it? And if the answer is yes, then you support it, right? And if the answer is no, then you don't. But take the emotion out of it. Take the, hey, I fought for 3 years and this guy was nowhere to be seen. It really doesn't matter at this point because we're shifting to the promotional phase of this thing.
And you don't know if that person 3 years ago had no idea what the Snyder Cut even was. Maybe he learned about it 6 months ago.
Right.
Well,
even if they were anti 3 months ago,
well, that's
if
true.
if they've changed and they're pushing a positive message, I will support them while they're pushing a positive message. The minute they turn, then I remove my support. Right? It's that simple for me. I'm not going to try and get into, well, 6 months ago you said you didn't like this. Who gives a shit? If they're promoting it right now, if they have a fan base of haters and now they're converted and preaching conversion to their fan base, embrace that. We need those people. We need those views if we want more. And really that sort of brings us into the next two pieces because we got to wrap it up here. We've talked a little bit about the legacy of the movement. We've talked briefly about Sean O'Connell. He's documenting this movement in his Release the Snyder Cut book. We've talked in past episodes about all the work that Fiona and Chris and others have put into the forsnydercut.com website. I don't know that we have time to get into detail on those things, maybe brief thoughts. We've talked about the lasting legacy, the impact of the donations to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, over $500,000 raised. And that's that's something that seems to be continuing on. That's, I think, is always going to be a part of anything promotional, anything fundraising that we do as part of this fandom. And then we've got the impact on artistic integrity, and even the empowerment of fan movements going forward, right? These are all, all sort of lasting legacies from this movement. And then I think at the same time, we can talk, in addition to talking a little bit about those things, we can talk about a little bit about where do we go from here, because this thing is coming out in a month. What's the future of this movement? What are we doing for the next month? And then what's the future of the Snyderverse? So I'm going to dump all that on you guys. Give me your thoughts, and let's wrap it up. So Lupe, final thoughts on all those things. Where do you go with this?
I think the movement, even with the division in the fandom, I think that we've grown enough and we're strong enough to achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve. I think that there might never be 100% unity, but as long as there's respect and people stop the tiny distractions and quarrels, which some people seem not to, then we can achieve what we want to do. Because, for example, TPZ, is, as we said, they've been good staying on the AFSP message. RT Snyder Cut has also been very good on that, and also has been good with galvanizing the fan and releases. And then TPZ, they're going to do Justice Con, in which we're going to get to see Zach's face, hear his voice, analyze the film. That'll be after the film is out. So I think that the next steps for us are, step number one is to make sure that the release is a success. That's the biggest, most impactful blockbuster of this year, which I truly think that it can be, but the distribution is kind of funny. But I think that at least for whatever distribution channels it comes out on, I think that it's going to be hugely impactful, and its impact on the studio will be undeniable. And then from there, we're going to need to start working towards restoring the Snyderverse, which is getting sequels for it. And it seems like we're back to square one, but I think that we've done it before. We can do it again.
All right, and Christian, what are your closing thoughts on all of this? The legacy of the movement, and where do we go from here?
I already talked a little bit, so I won't, about the legacy of the movement with Foundation with suicide prevention, and because I'm drinking bourbon, I got myself emotional. So we'll move on from that. So I think that that's a lasting legacy that everybody should be proud of, and I hope it continues and it never stops. I hope that is something that never stops. And if the Snyder Cut is intrinsically linked forever with suicide awareness and prevention, that's a win. And I think that that's a serious positive thing that everybody should be proud of. Now, fan empowerment and the integrity there, my thoughts on that are this is unique. Fans have gotten together and gotten Family Guy back. Fans have gotten together and got the Donner Cut. And there's so many, we've gotten, director's cuts of different movies and stuff. But this was different. This was a group of people in a studio choosing to torpedo somebody and their vision and really squash them and push them to the side. And there seemed to be a lot of hatred behind all of that. We've outlined all of it. Don't have to go back into it. But this was very unique in a lot of ways. And I wonder if something like this could be accomplished yet again. We feel like it could because we're so excited about it, and I'm so proud of what you guys were able to do. But I'm not sure. This was a very unique set of circumstances that came together.
I'm not sure.
I really am not.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but I don't think.
No, I only got 1 point after this. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just to reinforce what you're saying. I don't think we really delved into how, and we may have a chance to in our previews. Mm-hmm. The more I look at things that have happened, this was like shooting a bullet through the eye of a needle.
It was nuts.
I'm telling you, because I don't think people realize that not only did we need to do everything that we did right in terms of the decisions that we made, in terms of every single thing we did in terms of campaigns. Like, do you use this hashtag? Do you do this? Do you do this? Letter write in that banner, this plane, this. Everything was perfect. Then HBO Max came along, and HBO Max, the launch was botched.
Yeah.
To the point where they were desperate for content. And then AT&T had just bought Warner Brothers. So HBO Max had priority over Warner Brothers. And they were able to flex muscle and say, we want that property. And there's not shit you can do about it because we get dibs. Because the people who bought us, they don't really care about the studio. What they care about is the streamer. And the launch was botched because they couldn't do contracts with like Roku and all that stuff. And then it's also because the person who was in charge of HBO Max was Bob Greenblatt, who is not tangled in any of the anti-Snyder studio politics, which Emmerich and Hamada are. After Bob Greenblatt brought the Snyder Cut to HBO Max and gave Zack Snyder, I'm telling you, the budget is about $100 million. I calculated it. It is. Gave him carte blanche, said, do everything that you want to do, anyhow you want to do it. He got fired, and then Emmerich and Hamada come over as executive decision makers at HBO Max. If any of that had lapsed, we would never have gotten the Snyder Cut. If we didn't hit that window where Bob Greenblatt was there, HBO Max was there, they needed the content, we would not have gotten the Snyder Cut until at least Emmerich and Hamada had moved on from being executive decision makers at Warner Brothers.
And I think...
Go ahead.
Well, and hold your thought, Paul. I think that segues into my final thought, because you're 100% right. I think it was an extremely unique set of circumstances for all of this to kind of fall into place. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just a unique set of circumstances for all of it to fall into place. And the push for studios to get direct to consumer, streaming content is where they want to go. We can have a conversation about theatrical another day. We've been beating that subject to death. But direct to consumers, what these companies and what these studios want to do. To my final thought is, where do we go from here then with the Snyderverse? It feels to me like Warner, that DC has been dropping hints that these universes all exist and they're canon. You know, you got Ezra Miller showing up in the CW and everything like that. So they're dropping these hints that the Keaton Burton verse does exist. And so you got Flashpoint kind of breaking off into all these nodes, if you will, the multiverse, infinite Earths, whatever you want to call what DC's trying to do. Can the Snyderverse continue? And I think the answer is yes. And I think direct-to-consumer HBO Max might be your answer, because what I'm about to say might be, don't take it the wrong way. Snyder's divisive. That does not mean bad. Divisive does not mean bad. It means he's divisive. It means that there are people that hate him and there are people that love him. But if you give him HBO Max, prestige content, you give him a budget, what if a Snyderverse is on HBO Max? Is that a bad thing? Now, to me, it's not.
No.
Yeah, to me, it's not. I think that's great.
If it means creative freedom.
Right. If it means he can create his universe, fuck that.
Yeah.
Do it. Absolutely.
It's a better place for it. It doesn't have the pressure of a theatrical release,
I
the
agree
family-friendly
with you
4-quadrant
150%.
sort of pressure of a theatrical release.
1,000% behind what you just said. Absolutely. Because, you know, why did the studio fuck with him to begin with? Because, like, we can blast, like, there was that video that came out about Marvel. Like, I don't have a problem with that, because I don't go to a Marvel movie to watch a Snyder movie. I go to a Marvel movie to watch a Marvel movie. That's a different. If I want to see a Nolan or a Spielberg movie, I know it all because I want to see it, because Spielberg's my favorite director. That's why. But if you're going to give him the ability to be Snyder on HBO Max with the budget behind it to do what he wants, fuck yeah. Go for it. Because then they can do whatever the hell they want in the CW. They can do whatever the hell they want in the theaters when they come back. And then guess what? We get the Snyderverse and HBO Max, and it all exists. It's all canon. Boom. It works.
Boom.
Now, of course, everyone's got to do the right thing, right? We got to make the Snyder Cut. We got to have that popular. We got to have the numbers go up for HBO Max, all that. But that's what I think the future of the Snyderverse could be. Maybe it's not theatrical. Maybe it's direct to consumer. And I don't think that's bad.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Christian. And I'll just, add on to a couple of your points here. One, Lupe, you talked about the fandom, what's the future of the fandom and can we be united? Just to piggyback off of what you said, be respectful to each other. It's just as simple as stop screen capturing and quote tweeting each other. And this is both sides, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just stop
Yeah.
that. Stop
No,
trying to vilify each other. Like, you don't have to agree on everything. We're all united in our end goal. Stop trying to vilify other parts of the fandom. Stop trying to say, oh, I know some people are toxic, but they're the minority. Well, stop trying to throw other people under the bus and call them toxic. Who are you to decide who's toxic, right? Like, because it's always the virtuous side pointing at the other side saying, oh, they're toxic, but not me. Stop calling anyone toxic. Defend each other as fans. You know what I mean? Stop.
You're right.
Or if you don't want to defend each other, if you don't feel the behavior is defensible, that's fine. Don't defend it, but don't quote tweet and screen capture and vilify and try and shame people and cause pylons. Like, stop that. Like, be united in the goal, which is getting the Snyder Cut out, and then supporting the Snyder Cut, making sure it's a success, and then restoring the Snyderverse. And that's really all we have to do to be united. Like, we don't need to sing Kumbaya and hug, hug each other and be friends. We just need to stay focused on the goal and stop trying to tear each other apart. Stop trying to show whose side of the fandom is right. And that's both sides. That's not vilifying TPZ and their side, because our side does it too, right? It goes in both directions. So just stop that, right? Number one. Number two, talking about like Lupe's, threading the eye of the needle. I mean, the other thing you didn't mention is COVID. I mean, COVID actually helped us in the end, right?
Yeah.
It may not have been the driving factor in the beginning, but when you could turn that pitch to, hey, we can't do anything but VFX, and oh, by the way, we've got 2,500 VFX shots that need to be done, then it's a win-win, right? We got a product that only needs VFX that there's an incredible demand for, and we can employ people, right?
Yeah, no. I just wanted to kind of massage that a little bit. COVID came after the Snyder Cut had been greenlit.
Well, officially, it was announced May 20th, right? And people, the actors and actresses, said that Snyder approached them towards the end of April. COVID was a problem by mid-March. Now, maybe the wheels were already in motion. I'm not denying that. Yeah. But you can spin the pitch, right, based on COVID.
So there were two factors to the COVID thing. The first thing is that it actually first was an impediment. It actually first cropped up as, oh shit, this is not going to happen.
Yeah, we saw that. Now COVID's going to derail.
Can you imagine if they had said, you know what, let's put this decision on hold until after we're able to clear, this COVID hurdles. And then by then, Emmerich and Hamada had become, because they have, and by then, Emmerich and Hamada had become executive decision makers at HBO Max. And then they'd announced their, slate of films, and they're like, we don't need the Snyder Cut anymore. Dude, like I'm telling you, it was.
Yeah, no, the timing, because you're right. After Greenblatt got canned and those guys and Emmerich got promoted, and Warner Max got rolled into Warner Brothers Pictures, like this would never happen now. Like there was a small window where this could happen, and it did. If it didn't, we would have been done waiting till their administration was over, right? Like you said. Like it's really just incredible, and God, so grateful that it did happen the way it did. But like I
don't know how your marriage would have lasted.
Yeah, no, it could have. But honestly, there's been something like I just had this feeling that this was going to happen all the way along. It just felt like this had to happen. Like if I didn't believe this was going to happen, I wouldn't have stuck with it this long. And I think that's true for most people in this fandom. Yeah. There was just something about this that felt like it was inevitable. It had to happen. There was too much demand. How can a business demand? How can a business ignore their customers' demand, especially a business that destroyed this universe trying to address customer demand? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, how can you continue to ignore something that's hijacked your social media platforms? Like they said it themselves. They couldn't. We paralyzed their social media with demand for this thing, right? How can you continue to ignore that? And
people said, "Shut up and take my money. I'll give you money."
For years, we said that until they finally listened.
Take my money.
Oddly enough, Emmerich and Hamada would not have listened because their egos were bigger. But thank God, the right circumstances of right chain of circumstances happened with Jason Kilar coming in and the demand being there for streaming content, and Bob Greenblatt being in the right place and not being invested in the ego game at the time. I mean, all these decisions got made just in the right sequence for this to happen. So with that said, I don't want to belabor the point. I just want to make, my last piece about the future of the Snyderverse. I mean, I think you guys have said it. I think everyone understands it. Right now, Snyder himself has said Warner Brothers Pictures has no plans to continue this universe, at least with him at the helm. That being said, if we make this thing the success that we believe it can be, and I mean, God, what else is more hyped in the comic book, film sphere right now? What is there more excitement for? I mean, I don't think there's anything personally. If this is a success, and hopefully it will be, and if we all keep doing our parts both online and in real life, again, how can they continue to ignore the demand? At some point, someone above Emmerich and Hamada, Ann Sarnoff, Jason Kilar, Casey Blois, someone's got to say, hey guys, there's obvious demand here. This was a huge success. Time to put your egos aside, or it's going to cost you your careers, right? So all we can really do is focus on making this thing a huge success, showing continued demand in the way we showed demand for this, showed demand for more Snyderverse, and then just be relentless. Don't give up. And it's been a long ride, but we'll see if hopefully we can all hang in there, keep the energy up, and make this happen. So with that, do you guys have any final thoughts before I pass it back to you, Christian, to wrap it up and close out this episode?
Yeah, I mean, finally, I'll just say that, just to buttress your last point, in terms of having energy to sustain us, the Snyder Cut is going to give us so much juice. It's going to be ridiculous. And I really do believe that not just us, I believe that when regular people see the Snyder Cut, Warner Brothers is in trouble. I'm telling you, like, the analogy I use is that Zack Snyder's foot is going to be on their necks. Regular people are going to see it and be like, WTF. Like, what are you doing? Because there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that's as grand as his vision, that's as ambitious as his vision. And it's just the feel of the Snyder Cut is just, of Zack Snyder's world, is just different. It's just different. And that's where the juice is going to come from. It's like BVS fed us for years. This is going to sustain us for as long as we need to.
I think that's the key, is getting the quote unquote regular fans, whatever you want to call them. If they, and I think you have a better chance, right? Because the talk has been, well, I mean, the Snyder fans are going to love this no matter what, right? They're going to be like, it's the greatest movie ever. So, okay, you guys are supposed to love it. But if that other section of the fandom also gets behind it, and you got a better chance of that happening now. I mean, that's just because you got all these people excited. Everyone's hot and horny for it. So if people are horny for the Snyder Cut and you get that payoff, absolutely, you got a shot. I think you got more than a shot at this point. And they've already, as I said a couple of minutes ago, they've dangled that, well, the universes are all canon. So we could go in any direction we want and create any universe we want. So why can't that one be one? But yeah, you're right. I think it's really, you got a lot of people that are hyped about this now. Haters are going to hate. Fine. Haters are going to hate. You guys do what you got to do. Lovers going to love. You guys do what you got to do. But that group in the middle, man, if they eat this up, it's off to the races, I think. Really Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it is.
No, you're right. And part of that is, like, you could see the reaction to all the apocalypse images.
Yeah.
People are like, okay, Zack Snyder, now you have my attention. And there is more of that, where that's coming from.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm just like, we're these are topics for other days. We're gonna get into previews. And Paul, I want to thank you for organizing this. I want everybody to know that the brainchild behind this countdown to the Snyder Cut is Paul. He's the one that's organized it, come up with the format, the questions. So thank you very much for your hard work. And I'm looking forward to the next episode, part 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait, guys. All right, with that, Christian, I'm going to pass it back to you. You can wrap it up, and we'll look forward to the trailer tomorrow and coming back with our preview after we've seen these trailers and really getting fired up for the movie coming up in the home stretch here.
That's right. You hit it. I'm finishing up my DC rewatch actually as we speak. I just finished Aquaman the other night, so I only got a couple left, Lupe, and we're going to dive into this before we get to the
Nice.
Snyder cut. So
I can't
I'm
wait.
looking forward to it. I want to revisit some of these movies with you definitely. So keep an eye out for that. That'll come out right before the cut itself. Like Paul said, we're going into the next episode. We get that trailer tomorrow, which will interrupt everybody's romantic Valentine's Day. So hopefully you take a couple minutes from your significant other or watch it with your significant other, God damn it, and enjoy the damn thing. And you guys both get pumped for the Snyder cut, and maybe other stuff will happen. Anyway, that's disgusting. Keep it PG-13. So we went really long.
It's
We
not okay.
apologize,
It's
guys.
R-rated.
Well, that's right. The cuts are rated, so you guys can give us R-rated comments if you want to. If you make it to the end of this, we're going to be eating good. We're really going to be eating good. So leave us a hamburger emoji. I want the burger.
I like that. That's a good one.
So give us the burger. We're going to be eating good. Let's say goodbye to everybody. Lupe, give everybody a sign off.
All right, people. Thank you for listening. I know that this was a long one. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for going on this journey with us. I know that these are kind of retrospective, but the ones that are coming up, the episodes that are coming up, they're going to be looking forward. So I think that we're going to be doing a lot more, sort of like speculation and prognostication. It's going to be like fun, throwing out theories and all that kind of stuff. Also, look out for my trailer reaction. I'm going to do a breakdown. I don't know whether it's going to come out before this episode or not, but look out for that. So I'm Live Love Lupe on Twitter, Live Love Lupe on Vero. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. And Paul, putting in that work. Thank you, sir. You put all the work for today. Where can people talk with you online about the Snyder Cut and anything else you want to talk about?
As always, you can reach me on Twitter @_Paul_P. And it was my pleasure. Enjoyed this and looking forward to finishing up over the next couple episodes.
Thank you both. You guys are both old schoolers, been in this for a while, and I appreciate you taking me on the journey with you. And I really appreciate you guys bringing me on as well so I can give you my takes as kind of being a bit of an outsider. As before, you can find me at the same place. I'm both on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm at chart6363. My name's Christian. Hit me up. You can find the Film Exiles on Twitter at the Film Exiles and also on Vero at the Film Exiles. Everybody, please, COVID is still a thing. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Stay exiled.